Chapter 53. Well, last night around 12 o'clock, I think I went back to my room to sleep. Zhang Chung didn't know that he had been recognized and deliberately pretended to recall. After all, the concept of around 12 o'clock was very vague. It could be after 11 o'clock or before 1 o'clock in the morning. If it was the latter, then he definitely wasn't lying. At most, he was deliberately misinterpreting the other party's meaning. Went back to your room to sleep? Are you sure? Eileen raised her head and stared at him with two sharp eyes. Sir, I have to remind you that lying during the investigation of a case is a legal offense, Clive also threatened. The two of them were echoing each other, trying to create a psychological pressure to force the so-called only witness to take the initiative to confess everything that happened last night. But unfortunately, they were clearly using their threat on the wrong person. After experiencing a short journey in Azeroth, Zhang Cheng's strength and mentality had undergone a tremendous change. He even went through a fierce battle, so how could he be scared by a few words? He shrugged his shoulders indifferently and replied, Sorry, officer. If you say so, then from now on, I will remain silent. Unless a lawyer is present, I will not answer any questions. Eileen glanced at the simple furnishings in the room and curled her lips in disdain. You can afford a lawyer? Obviously, under normal circumstances, people who lived in such a small apartment in the slums might not even be able to afford legal advice, let alone a lawyer. Of course, not everyone who lived in the slums was poor. Drug dealers and gang members were very rich, but they would never work at a restaurant to wash dishes. In fact, when she came, she had asked around and was very clear about how poor the young man in front of her was. Please wait a moment. I'll make a phone call. You'll soon know if I can afford a lawyer or not. Zhang Chung didn't say anything else and picked up the phone to dial the restaurant's number. In just a few seconds, Catherine's lazy voice came from the other side. Good morning, my dear little wizard. Calling me in such a hurry. Are you in trouble? Zhang Chung raised his head and stared at the policeman standing at the door, ready to laugh at him. He lowered his voice and said, Unfortunately, you guessed right. 2 policemen are standing at the door right now. You'd better send a lawyer over quickly. You should know that I'm an illegal immigrant without a birth certificate. Ha ha ha, don't be nervous. If I can't even handle such a small problem, what qualifications do I have to sit on the seat of the Lord? Just wait. I promise that the lawyer will appear in front of you in 5 minutes. After that, Catherine hung up the phone. As the busy tone echoed in the corridor, Elena asked with a faint smile, Sir, how long will it take for your lawyer to arrive? 5 minutes. Although Zhang Chung wasn't sure if the time was accurate, he still chose to believe the witch's promise. In addition, the other party's unreasonable attitude really made him a little angry, so his tone became stiff. Well, we'll wait for 5 minutes. But if the lawyer doesn't arrive in 5 minutes, you'd better honestly tell me what you saw last night. Otherwise, I don't mind arresting you and handing you over to the Immigration Bureau. Clive threatened, half true and half false. As an old policeman, he was very clear about how many illegal immigrants from all over the world were in his jurisdiction. Generally speaking, as long as they didn't repeatedly participate in criminal activities, the police wouldn't care. Because even the United States government didn't have the energy and money to repatriate tens of millions of illegal immigrants. Sometimes, many companies relied on the cheap labor provided by them to reduce costs and improve their competitiveness. Zhang Chung didn't pay attention to the verbal threat at all. He turned around and walked into the bathroom to brush his teeth and take a shower. He simply didn't put the other party in his eyes. Anyway, the other party didn't have a search warrant, nor did they get the invitation of the owner of the house. If they dared to cross the threshold, then even if the two found any evidence, it wouldn't be used as evidence. Listening to the sound of running water in the bathroom, Elena couldn't help but curse in a low voice. Damn it, this guy seems to be a bit difficult to deal with. Clive calmly lit a cigarette, took a deep breath, and then comforted his partner with a smile. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we found the person. We can take it slow. If necessary, we can apply for an exchange with the director, such as giving him a green card. Green card? Elena's eyes widened in surprise. Yes, green card. Clive nodded seriously. You don't know yet, right? Just 40 minutes ago, the director personally called and said that the FBI is coming to take over the case. If we can solve the case before they arrive, not only will it greatly increase the prestige of the Bureau, but it will also add a lot of color to our resumes. Once the director's term ends and he leaves, you and I may be promoted. Why is the FBI suddenly concerned about a murder case? Elena obviously didn't care about whether she could be promoted or not. She frowned and questioned. It said that in the last month or so, there have been 7 or 8 cases of people being bitten to death by giant canines. They want to see if they can find any breakthrough. Before Clive could finish his words, he suddenly saw 2 men in suits pass through the stairs and walk towards them. The leader was a slightly plump, middle-aged man in his 50s. He didn't say a word of courtesy, but directly handed over his business card and introduced himself in a very formal tone. My name is Pullman, and I'm the legal counsel of Catherine's Kiss Restaurant. From now on, I'm responsible for protecting Mr. Zhang's legal rights. Clive took the business card, dumbfounded, and found that the other party wasn't joking, but a real professional lawyer. God, a poor guy living in the slums can actually afford to hire a lawyer. For a moment, the expressions on the faces of the 2 detectives were as if they had seen a ghost. Even as middle-class people, they had to think twice about hiring a lawyer for a lawsuit. Otherwise, they could go bankrupt at any time because of the drawn-out lawsuit and the expensive lawyer fees. At the same time, Zhang Cheng, who had just finished showering, walked out of the bathroom. While wiping his wet hair with a towel, he sneered and mocked. "How is it, officer? Now you believe that I can afford a lawyer, right? Good morning, Mr. Zhang. It's an honor to meet you." The lawyer bowed respectfully with one hand on his chest. "Oh, you know me?" Zhang Cheng raised his eyebrows in surprise. Chapter 54. Although the lawyer's voice was very low, it was no less than a bolt from the blue for Zhang Cheng, and he froze in place. He couldn't believe that Catherine would so rashly tell a stranger about her magic power. The Pullman noticed this and explained with a smile, "Please don't worry, I'm the same kind of person as you. It's not convenient to talk now, so please allow me to send these 2 police officers away first before I explain slowly." As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly took out a folder from his briefcase and stuffed it directly to Clive at the door. "Here, officer, this is my client, Mr. Zhang's birth certificate, driver's license, and insurance account. As a citizen of the United States of America, he has the constitutional right to remain silent. If you continue to harass my client, then I'll file a complaint against you, and, if necessary, I'll even send you to the dock." "WH, what?" Clive's eyes almost popped out of their sockets in surprise. Of course, he wasn't surprised by the lawyer's threatening tone, but by the detailed information in his hands. Anyone with half a brain wouldn't believe that a guy who was suspected of being an unregistered resident a few minutes ago would suddenly have a complete set of identification documents and even credit card records. What's more, the information was sent to them right after they arrived. Obviously, someone had tampered with it. Eileen, who had always been suspicious, quickly took out her phone and asked her colleagues in the police station to help verify it. After a few minutes, the other party gave a positive answer that all the information was real. Even the mother of this so-called Mr. Zhang lived in the famous Upper East Side of New York and was a well-known Chinese businessman. For a moment, not to mention the 2 police officers, even Zhang Cheng himself had an expression of disbelief on his face. He knew very well that he didn't have any relatives in this world, let alone any so-called legal identity. Obviously, the identity information in the lawyer's hands was 100% fake, but for some reason, even the judicial system couldn't find any problems. There was no doubt that everyone present knew in their hearts that this information couldn't be real, but the police couldn't produce evidence to prove that it was fake, and the lawyer and Zhang Qing wouldn't take the initiative to admit it, so the 2 sides were in a deadlock. Just as the atmosphere became more and more awkward, there was a sudden rush of footsteps at the end of the corridor. About 10 seconds later, 2 men in black suits appeared at the corner. The man in the lead quickly walked up to Clive and took out an ID from his suit pocket. He said rudely, "Good morning, detective. I'm Jason, an FBI field agent. I believe you've already received the notice. From now on, we'll be in charge of this case. F***CK. Elena, let's go. After clearly seeing the other party's ID, Clive cursed in a low voice and pulled his partner to leave. Although the latter was a little unwilling, he still obediently turned around and left the dilapidated apartment. Watching them walk away through the dirty glass window, the man who called himself Jason had a hint of mockery in his eyes. Then, he unexpectedly turned around, opened his arms, and gave the lawyer a warm hug. "Ha ha! Long time no see, Pullman. How have you been?" "Not bad. It's just that you're gaining weight a little too quickly. Also, why are you guys here? Are you afraid that I can't handle the two detectives?" After the hug, the Pullman joked with a smile. "No, it has nothing to do with the two detectives. The werewolves have gone a little too far, so the council sent us to deal with it," Jason explained while scrutinizing Zhang Cheng, who was standing not far away. "Oh, is the council going to take action?" The Pullman raised his eyebrows. Jason shook his head lightly. "It's not action yet. It's just to prevent the situation from escalating. After all, it's a sensitive period right now. Any movement could cause a fight between the lords of Brooklyn. Right? Who is this young man? Why haven't I seen him before?" The Pullman pretended to smile mysteriously. "Sorry, old friend. I can only tell you that he's one of Lord Catherine's men. If you want to know more, you should ask the lady yourself. The Witch of Desire, Catherine." Jason was clearly shocked. "Ha, that's right. I advise you not to have any bad ideas. Otherwise, Lady Catherine won't let you go. All right, we still have other matters to attend to. Let's talk another time." After saying that, Borman gave Zhang Cheng a look and pulled him out of the apartment without any explanation. But how could Zhang Cheng, who had a lot of sensitive items hidden in the room, be at ease? He quickly said in a low voice, "Wait, I have something to take care of. Can you give me half an hour?" "What's in such a hurry? Can't you wait until you come back?" The Pullman frowned slightly. From the anxious expression on his face, it was clear that he didn't want to be with Jason at all. "Sorry, I'm afraid I can't. I'm hiding something that can't be exposed. If the police find out, I'm afraid it won't be something a lawyer can handle." Although Zhang Cheng wanted to leave this troublesome place with the other party and find out how the underground world worked and how even the famous FBI was infiltrated, Zhang Cheng didn't want to risk his life. But at the same time, he didn't want anything to happen to the treasures he had painstakingly brought back, especially the seeds of the various herbs. "Don't worry, leave it to me." The Pullman directly ordered his silent assistant. "Hubby, stay here and wait for Mr. Zhang to come back. Do you understand?" The latter nodded without hesitation. "Understood." Seeing that someone was guarding the door for him, Zhang Cheng no longer insisted. He stepped on the squeaky floorboards with the lawyer and quickly got into a black car, slowly driving in the direction of the restaurant. When the car drove out of the alley and entered the main road, he finally couldn't hold back and asked in a curious tone, "Mr. Pullman, how did you fool the police with the information you took out? Also, who are the two FBI agents?" "Ha ha ha." Upon hearing the series of questions, Pullman immediately laughed out loud proudly. As he laughed, he explained, "It's very simple. That information wasn't forged at all. It's real. I just slightly changed the photo in a certain lady's memory." "You mean impersonation?" Zhang Cheng instantly understood what he meant. "Yes, the person with the same name as you died half a year ago due to an accident. In order to cover up the truth, I changed all the related personnel's memories to make them think that this person went on a long trip. Now you can use his identity to blend into society. As for Jason, he is a member of the council. He is responsible for ensuring that no matter what happens, the underground world will not be exposed to the public." Chapter 55. Although it was only 2 short sentences, the amount of information contained within was shocking. Firstly, the Pullman seemed to have the ability to alter other people's memories. Although he did not know how it worked or if there were any restrictions, just this alone was terrifying enough. Secondly, the organization known as the Parliament was extremely powerful. Not only did they control the entire underground world, they also infiltrated every aspect of society. They even borrowed the power of the government to conceal their existence. Lastly, and most importantly, the witch Catherine seemed to be quite famous in the underground world. Many people who heard her name would show undisguised respect and fear. It was obvious that this woman who exuded an astonishing amount of charm was not as harmless as she appeared to be. Looking at the buildings that were quickly moving past him, Zhang Qing narrowed his eyes and thought about his next move. Due to the fact that the apartment was too close to the restaurant, before he could come up with a solution, the car slowly came to a stop. Kars, who had been waiting at the door, stepped forward and opened the car door. With a half-joking tone, he greeted, "Good morning, sir. I'm sorry, but I have to inform you that you have been fired from the restaurant. This is because I don't dare to let a powerful magus wash dishes in the kitchen. All right, it seems like I have to find a new job, right?" Zhang Qing got out of the car and also joked. As a mage who was very sensitive to energy, he could clearly feel an evil energy that was full of curses and resentment from the other party. He instantly became vigilant. "Ha ha, I like your sense of humor. Please follow me. Madam Catherine is currently bathing. Let me introduce you to the underground world and the rules that you have to abide by." After saying that, Kars waved at the Pullman. The latter did not say anything and immediately turned the car around and disappeared at the end of the road. Under the lead of the old Mexican man, the two of them quickly passed through the restaurant and came to a sealed room without any windows. The room was not big, only about 40 square meters. The walls and ceiling were densely painted with various drawings depicting human desires. There was an expensive handmade carpet on the floor, an old table with peeling paint, and two bright red antique sofas on the carpet. Other than that, there was nothing else. "Have a seat." Kars closed the heavy door and made an inviting gesture. Then he picked up the thick book on the table, wiped the thick dust off the cover, and flipped to the first page. Driven by curiosity, Zhang Qing glanced at it and found that it was not English but Latin, which was almost eliminated by the world. To be exact, it was ancient Latin. As for the content, unfortunately, he couldn't even recognize a single word, let alone understand it. Kars had undoubtedly noticed this. He smiled and explained, "This is a rather old book. It records in detail the underground world before and after the Congress was born. Because the author of this book was a powerful wizard who had lived for nearly 800 years, it was written in ancient Latin. If you want to read the entire book, it's best to find a Pullman to take the memories of someone who knows ancient Latin and transfer them to yourself. Today, I will only briefly explain it. You just need to have a general impression. Please begin. I can't wait any longer." Zhang Qing sat on the sofa, his eyes revealing a strong sense of anticipation. Kars nodded meaningfully. "All right, then let's begin." He skipped the part before the Congress was established. That period was too dark, bloody, and filled with disorder and violence. But all of this ended in 1354, because at the end of the year, the author of this book, the great sorcerer Willie Augustus, together with his friends, successfully killed the creator and disseminator of the Black Death, Tamon. They also uprooted the evil cult that Tamon had established. In order to prevent a repeat of the tragedy, he took the initiative to establish an organization to restrain all those who had supernatural powers or monsters in human skin. Due to the huge impact of the Black Death on the entire Europe, many individuals and forces chose to join, and this organization was the embryonic form of the Congress. After hundreds of years of evolution and expansion, the Congress's jurisdiction now covered the entire Americas, Europe, Oceania, and Central Asia. At the same time, it had signed agreements with the local forces in other areas to ensure that the underground world would never be discovered by ordinary people. Of course, due to the rapid expansion, the Congress had actually split into several parts, each of which governed their own affairs. New York, where we are, belongs to the North American part, which mainly includes Canada, America, and Mexico. In this area, there is a Supreme Council, which is formed by 13 members of equal status. Not only do they have terrifying individual strength, but they also manage hundreds of lords in the area. In addition to the Supreme Council, there are also secondary councils in some more important areas. For example, there is one in an international metropolis like New York. The secondary councils usually choose the strongest and most capable people according to the rules of the war game, according to the administrative area, to assist the Supreme Council in handling daily affairs. To put it simply, the members of the secondary councils were equivalent to the replacement members of the Supreme Council. If the former ran out of lifespan or died in an accident, then they would be chosen from the latter through voting. My master, the Witch of Desire, Madame Catherine, is currently a lord in the Brooklyn area of New York. Any supernatural forces living in the area must obey the rules set by her unconditionally, or they will be punished and expelled. Congress. Lord. Sounds interesting. Zhang Cheng muttered to himself with a smirk. It can't be helped. When the Congress was established, Europe was still at the edge of the Dark Middle Ages. So many features of the Middle Ages were preserved. For example, the title of Lord and the legislative power in the territory. Kars explained helplessly. He obviously understood what she meant by interesting. All right, since that's the case, can you tell me about the power of the Congress? Can they control the American government? Zhang Cheng hesitated for a few seconds, but still raised the question he was most concerned about. Control the American government? Who would do such a boring thing? I can only tell you that the Congress has the ability to influence and change any decision of the government if they think it's necessary. But generally speaking, the underground world is the underground world, and the world of ordinary people is the world of ordinary people. We try not to interfere. Before Kars could finish, a translucent spirit suddenly passed through the wall and appeared in the sealed room. In less than a minute, it solidified into a physical body. She was none other than Catherine. Chapter 56. How was it? Where did you stop? Catherine asked with a smile as she sat down next to Zhang Cheng. She didn't seem to mind that her naked body was exposed to the eyes of the opposite sex, as she wiped her wet hair with a towel. Kars quickly bowed and replied, Madam, we were just talking about the establishment and development of the parliament. However, Zhang has some misconceptions in his understanding. He has confused the world of normal people with our world. Oh, you don't think that the parliament has secretly controlled the government, right? Catherine's lips curled up as she looked at the young man beside her. Her eyes were full of mockery. Why not? I saw with my own eyes that even the FBI agents are members of the parliament. Isn't that enough to explain the problem? Zhang Cheng frowned and asked. In his opinion, no matter what organization it was, there were only two things they pursued: power and wealth. If there was an organization that could silently control the United States government, then it could obtain inexhaustible wealth and a huge nuclear arsenal that could destroy human civilization hundreds of times over. However, from the reaction of the two people in front of him, the parliament didn't seem to have such a plan at all. They didn't even have such thoughts. Puffed. Ha ha ha. Catherine couldn't hold back and laughed out loud. The two large lumps on her chest also shook up and down. After a while, she slowly stopped laughing. She raised Zhang Cheng's chin with a finger and explained in a coquettish tone, No, my cute little wizard. Please remember, the world of normal people is meaningless to us. What benefits does the parliament get from controlling the government? Dollars? I admit, to some people living at the bottom of the underground world, dollars are indeed quite attractive. However, to a lord like me, dollars are no different from waste paper. As long as I want to, I can enter any bank vault in the world at any time and take away thousands of dollars in gold bars without anyone knowing. I can also use the Pullman's ability to inherit the wealth of the dying rich through so-called legal means. But unfortunately, in the underground world, anything that is slightly valuable is not traded in US dollars, but in it. Saying this, the witch pulled out a golden coin from the middle of her unfathomable career line. The front of the coin was printed with the side profile of an old man, while the back was printed with 13 hexagonal stars. A small hole was drilled in the middle of the coin, and a black string was threaded through it. It was used as an amulet or something similar and hung around the snow-white slender neck. Zhang Cheng stroked the coin, which was still warm, and asked in an uncertain tone, A gold coin? You mean the underground world is still using primitive precious metals as currency? Catherine nodded slightly. That's right. Please note that this is not an ordinary precious metal coin, but a magic gold coin made in a special place. We call it gold dinar. Every gold dinar contained a considerable amount of magic energy. Not only could it not be forged, but could also be used to create magic items. A gold coin like this can easily be exchanged for hundreds of thousands of dollars in the underground world, but hundreds of thousands of dollars may not necessarily be exchanged for a single gold coin. I see. After listening to the witch's explanation, Zhangqing finally understood why the world of ordinary people was meaningless to the underground world. The answer was very simple. A long time ago, the Parliament had firmly controlled everything they needed and formed a relatively independent economic, political, and monetary system. In addition, the population base was very small, so there was no need to desperately fight for various natural resources in order to survive. Especially for a lord like Catherine who possessed powerful supernatural powers, what she really pursued was power and status in the underground world. The world of ordinary people was worthless in her eyes. After understanding this point, Zhangqing finally began to understand the real meaning of the so-called fantasy world mentioned on the parchment. Just as he was about to ask who was in charge of the casting of the magic gold coins and how much was produced, Catherine suddenly pounced on him without warning and pressed the tip of her nose against his cheek. She took a deep breath and said, "Ah, what an intoxicating smell. I really want to eat you right now, you delicious little snack." Carr saw this scene, and his face instantly changed. He quickly reminded her sternly, "Madam, please calm down. You're a little out of control." Just as he finished speaking, the witch's whole body involuntarily trembled. She took a few deep breaths, and her cannibalistic eyes slowly returned to normal. She got up from the sofa and tidied up her messy bathrobe. She said in a cold voice, "All right, today's conversation ends here. Kars, take him to register his identity." "Understood. Zhang, come with me. Madam needs to be alone for a while." Kars did not say anything else and dragged Zhangqing out. When he left the room, he did not forget to close the door tightly. Although it was only less than a minute, his forehead was already full of sweat. "What happened just now? I seem to feel the loss of magic." Zhangqing frowned and questioned. Although it was only for a short moment, he still felt a mysterious force taking away a little bit of magic from his body at the moment the witch inhaled. Ever since he came back, he could no longer draw magic energy from nature to restore his own magic. Therefore, even if it was just a little bit, he could still feel it. Kars looked back at the room door with lingering fear and nodded with a serious expression. "Yes. If it wasn't for my quick reaction, you would have been sucked dry by now. Did you know that Madame Catherine's title is the Witch of Desire? This means that desire is the source of her power, whether it's her own desire or the desire of others. Fortunately, you didn't have any physiological reaction just now. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to save you." "Desire? You mean she can obtain some kind of energy from the target's body by stimulating desire?" Zhangqing showed a horrified expression. He couldn't believe that he had unknowingly taken a trip to the gates of hell. "Sorry, it's not convenient for me to reveal too much. But you have to remember, if you don't want to die, don't have any crooked thoughts. She's old enough to be your great-grandmother." Chapter 57. "Phew, I'm finally done." Zhangqing, who had just walked out of the restaurant, raised his head to look at the blue sky and let out a long sigh of relief. Registering his identity was much easier than he had expected. All he had to do was to get a magic tattoo in the shape of a wizard's hat on his left palm. This tattoo was equivalent to an identity card in the underground world, allowing him to enter and exit some special places, such as bounty hunter taverns and shops that sold magic potions. He could even get some jobs to earn money. In short, from now on, he could be considered to have truly integrated into the underground world from an outsider. However, it was obviously not the time to relax. Zhangqing's top priority was to find a safe and stable residence as soon as possible. Then, he would pour the well water from the sun well into a container to create an energy source that could continuously replenish his magic power. Otherwise, once there was not much magic power left in his body, he would be no different from an ordinary person. Just as he was considering where he could rent a cheap and relatively safe house, a black car suddenly came out from the corner and slowly stopped by the roadside. The person sitting in the driver's seat was none other than the Pullman. This lawyer, who had the ability to alter other people's memories, stared at the magic tattoo in the shape of a wizard's hat and quickly said with a smile, "Congratulations. I'm afraid I have to address you as Your Excellency now. You must know that in the underground world, being a wizard is a widely respected profession. You will never have to worry about gold dinars." "You've been waiting for me?" Zhang Cheng narrowed his eyes and probed. As the saying goes, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. Even if he used his but to think, he could tell that the other party had a motive. You guessed right. I hope to make a deal with you. Come, get in the car. I'll drive you back. We can talk on the way. After saying that, the Pullman took the initiative to open the car door and respectfully made a gesture of invitation. "Interesting. Then let me hear the details of your deal." After figuring out the other party's motive, Zhang Cheng's tensed nerves relaxed a little and directly got into the back seat. With a guilty conscience, the Pullman nervously turned around and looked in the direction of the restaurant. After confirming that no one was paying attention to him, he immediately started the car at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, the huge signboard Catherine's Kiss was thrown out of the rearview mirror. When he encountered the first traffic light, he slowed down the car and explained with a wry smile, "I'm really sorry. I hope this transaction can be kept a secret. It's best if only the two of us know about it. Is that okay?" Zhang Cheng's eyes flashed with a hint of playfulness. He nodded without hesitation. "No problem. I like to keep secrets. Now, you can tell me the details of the deal." "Thank you for your understanding. Actually, the deal is very simple. I know that you need a safe place to stay, some daily expenses, and a disguise to blend in with the ordinary people. I can take care of all these for you, and you only need to promise to repay me with 5 gold dinars in the future." The Pullman carefully laid out his conditions. 5? Zhang Cheng pretended to be surprised and raised his eyebrows. Up until now, he still didn't know the purchasing power of 1 gold dinar in the underground world. Judging from the fact that 1 gold dinar could be exchanged for hundreds of thousands of dollars, it definitely wouldn't be bad. If you think it's more expensive, 4 is fine." The Pullman pretended to be pained and lowered his request. Zhang Cheng pursed his lips and remained silent. He didn't give any reply. He could tell that this slightly chubby lawyer was prepared to make a fortune from him, a fat sheep who had just fallen into the trap and didn't understand the market at all. "Damn it. 3. 3 should be fine, right? Don't think that it's easy for me to use my ability. I have to pay a price every time." Seeing that the fat sheep didn't reply for a long time, the Pullman immediately became anxious. He turned his head and shouted excitedly. After all, he had been busy the entire morning. If he didn't get anything in the end, it would be a huge loss. "Okay, 3, I agree." Zhang Cheng pretended to agree very reluctantly. No matter what, a place to live, cash, and an identity were the most urgent things at the moment. As for the payment, he would pay in the future. He believed that with the herbs and alchemy he brought back from Azeroth, he would definitely be able to earn enough gold dinars. "God, you finally gave a positive answer. I swear, you will never regret this deal." The Pullman excitedly talked to himself as he took out a folder from his briefcase and handed it over. "Please take a look. This is all the assets of your imposter, including a townhouse in Brooklyn, about $6 million worth of stocks, and $700,000 worth of savings. Most importantly, he has a single mother with a net worth of more than $600 million. As the only son, he could get a legal inheritance of more than $300 million. If you want, I can get rid of this mother at any time and let you get the inheritance in advance. What do you think? 3 gold dinars for so much. Worth it, right?" After briefly looking through the driver's license, real estate, securities, credit cards, bank accounts, and birth certificate in the folder, Zhang Cheng nodded with satisfaction. "Not bad, it is indeed worth it. But I have a question. This guy is about the same age as me. I believe that many people have seen him before. What if they accidentally bump into him?" "Please don't worry, I will do a screening in the next 2 weeks. I will modify the memories of those who can still remember what he looks like. There won't be any problems. The only thing you need to pay attention to is that this guy has a hot young girlfriend. You should be careful when you go to bed with her. Don't go overboard, otherwise you will definitely arouse suspicion." The Pullman reminded with a wretched look. Do you think I'm the kind of idiot who can't control his lower body? Zhang Chen curled his lips. No, to be able to become a wizard means that you have self-control that ordinary people can't achieve. But the problem is, there are always some beautiful women in the world who can arouse a man's subconscious desire. There's no point in saying more. You will understand what I mean when you see her. After saying this meaningful sentence, the Pullman parked the car in front of the apartment. What the hell? Zhang Cheng shrugged his shoulders and ignored the fat lawyer. He opened the door and walked toward his room. His plan was to move all the things he brought back from Azeroth to the townhouse before dark. Then he would stay there for half a month to organize his gains. Chapter 58. Following the direction the girl had rushed out, Zhang Cheng saw a police car as expected. Clive and Elena were sitting inside, drinking hot coffee while paying attention to the development of the situation. Obviously, they hadn't given up on the investigation of the case, but had changed to another method. Needless to say, this young girl was most likely the victim's older sister, and the two police officers wanted to use her to test Zhang Cheng's reaction. If Zhang Cheng showed a little bit of guilt and hesitation, then they would immediately use this as a breakthrough to launch a psychological attack and finally get the evidence they wanted. Don't make the mistake of thinking that the police were definitely good people. On the contrary, once they were proficient in the law, ordinary people were no match for them at all. But unfortunately, Zhang Cheng wasn't an ordinary person, let alone a good person. He pushed the other party away and said very coldly, "Sorry, miss. I'm afraid I don't know you, and I don't know who your sister is. You got the wrong person." "No, I'm not wrong. It's you. If you don't explain what happened last night clearly, don't even think about leaving." The girl suddenly opened her arms and blocked the door of the apartment. Not sure if it was because she was too emotional or because she was filled with anger, but her whole body was trembling uncontrollably. Zhang Cheng didn't pay attention to the girl who was obviously being used. He turned to the street corner and knocked on the window of the police car, asking with a sneer, "Detectives, are you sure you want to use this method?" What are you talking about? How come I don't understand a single word?" "Elena, do you understand?" Clive asked his partner in the front passenger seat with an innocent face. The latter raised the corner of his mouth and spread his hands with a faint smile. "No, I think he misunderstood something." "Oh, so it was a misunderstanding. Sir, I have to remind you that it's very impolite to question two police officers without evidence. We even have the right to arrest you. But since you've done it once, I'll overlook it." Clive pretended to be generous as he hinted. "Misunderstanding? Very good. I think I know what to do." Looking at the two of them echoing each other, Zhang Cheng's eyes flashed with killing intent, dealing with a dangerous which had already exhausted all his patience. Now that the police had come to his door and pestered him, he had an impulse to use violence to solve the problem. As a detective who often dealt with criminal cases, Clive felt threatened. He hurriedly gripped his gun and asked warily, "What do you want?" "Don't worry, you'll know soon enough." After that, Zhang Cheng turned around and walked straight to the door of the apartment. This time, he had no intention of stopping. The moment he was about to collide with his opponent, his pupils shone with a violet light. The girl seemed to have been attacked by something. Her whole body twitched violently, and then she fell to the ground with a plop. Karina's expression changed drastically when she saw this scene. She immediately rushed out to help the girl up and sternly questioned, "Bastard, what did you do to her?" "Sorry, officer. I think you've misunderstood something. So many people around saw that I didn't touch this girl at all. Maybe she just fainted because of some illness, and it has nothing to do with me. Please remember, as a police officer, you have to have evidence. If you don't have evidence, I can have my lawyer send you to court at any time." Zhang Cheng repeated what the other party had just said. In fact, he had only injected arcane energy into the girl's body to disrupt her normal physiological cycle. She would slowly wake up in a few minutes, or at most 10 minutes. Just as Karina was about to say something, Clive grabbed his partner and stared straight into Zhang Cheng's eyes. "Sir, don't you feel guilty for doing this to a young girl who just lost her family?" "Guilty? Why should I feel guilty? You should be the ones feeling guilty. It was you who brought her here. Also, I promise that if she continues to pester me, then this kind of situation will repeat itself. Maybe after a few times, she will either become a lunatic or an idiot, and the two of you will have to live with this heavy guilt for the rest of your lives. Cold, cruel, merciless. Zhang Cheng used his actions to tell the two police officers that it was best not to bother him for no reason. Otherwise, he could get rid of anyone who annoyed him without breaking the law. Watching his back disappear at the end of the corridor, Karina couldn't help but curse in a low voice. F***CK. This guy is definitely abnormal. Now I'm starting to think that maybe he's not the witness we're looking for, but the psychopathic murderer. Don't think too much. Send this girl to the hospital first. We have to figure out what method he used to make a young and healthy girl suddenly faint. Clive helped the unknown girl into the police car and sped towards the nearest hospital. Not long after they left, the Pullman quickly came to the room upstairs and suggested with a smile, "Honorable sir, do you want me to help you get rid of those two police officers and guarantee that they will never bother you again?" "Oh, how much?" Zhang Qing asked without turning his head as he packed his luggage. "One. Just one." The lawyer stretched out a slightly stubby finger. "Deal. Help me get rid of these two annoying flies." After hearing the price, Zhang Cheng agreed without hesitation. After all, what he needed most now was an environment where he wouldn't be disturbed, so he could calm down and finish his preparations. "Thank you for your generosity. It's my honor to be able to serve a wizard like you. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first." The Pullman, who earned 4 gold dinars in one go, had a joyful smile on his face. He placed one hand on his chest and bowed, then drove away with his assistant and disappeared at the end of the road. Looking at the empty room, Zhang Cheng took a deep breath, carried the heavy luggage, and murmured with emotion, "Goodbye, shabby little apartment. From now on, I'll start a new life." Just as he finished speaking, he turned back to the street, waved his hand to stop a taxi, and went straight to the townhouse located in the wealthy district of Brooklyn. Due to his impersonation, he no longer had to be afraid of the police and immigration and could walk openly under the sun. At the same time, the witch Catherine, who was far away in the basement of the restaurant, was skillfully masturbating a few young and handsome white men. Just as these guys' hormones began to rapidly secrete and attempted to pounce on her, she suddenly opened her seductive red lips and sucked hard. In an instant, the white youth seemed to have been hit by a spell. His eyes were wide open as he stood in place. His skin quickly became loose and sagged in a way visible to the naked eye. Wrinkles also appeared on his forehead and the corners of his eyes in just a few seconds. Chapter 59. It's delicious, but it's too little. I need more. More. Catherine licked her lips and moaned as if she hadn't had enough. She was so engrossed in her endless desires that she didn't even look at the victims. She slowly stood up and poured herself a glass of strong liquor. She raised her head and drank it in one gulp. Kars, who had been waiting for a long time, opened the door and walked in. He held a skull carved out of crystal and whispered an unknown spell. After about half a minute, wisps of white souls floated out of the victims' bodies and were forcibly absorbed into the skull. As for the bodies that had lost their souls, they had completely lost their vitality and turned into cold corpses. After doing all this, he let out a long sigh and said in a rather helpless tone, "Madam, this is the 4th time you've eaten this month. If you continue, I'm afraid you'll be found out sooner or later. I think your current body can no longer bear the side effects of desire. Maybe it's time to change to a new one." "Change to a new one?" Catherine frowned subconsciously. "Yes, you've been using this body for more than 30 years. According to the standards of ordinary humans, you've begun to age. This is also the reason why your desires have been getting harder and harder to control recently. Maybe it's time to start looking for one of your descendants to change," Kars carefully suggested. The witch narrowed her eyes and fell into deep thought. After about 2 or 3 minutes, she nodded gently. "You're right. It's time for me to change to a younger body. Go, and pick a young girl from my descendants who hasn't awakened her talent and bring her to me." "As you wish, madam." Kars bowed and turned to leave. But before he took a few steps, Catherine seemed to have thought of something and suddenly shouted, "Wait, how's Zhang now? Did he have any abnormal reactions?" Kars quickly stopped and replied in an uncertain tone. "As far as I know, he just moved into a townhouse in the Brooklyn Heights area a few minutes ago. He also pulled out all the expensive flowers in the greenhouse garden and planted unknown seeds. In addition, he also used his credit card to order a large number of glass test tubes, flasks, beakers, and other tools used for chemical experiments. As for what he's doing in the house, I'm not too sure." "Oh, it sounded like he was planning to concoct a magic potion. Interesting, my little wizard knows a little about alchemy." Catherine's mouth curved into a beautiful arc. "I think you'd better not get your hopes up. After all, alchemy is something that relies heavily on talent. There are no more than 30 people in the entire underground world who can concoct potions. There's only one in New York, and that's Councilman Miles, who is nearing the end of his life." Kars reminded expressionlessly. He did not think that a brat under the age of 30 could master such a complicated and difficult skill like alchemy. Of course, he did not know that Zhang Cheng's alchemy originated from Azeroth, which was completely different from the alchemy of this world. Even the materials used were completely different. Haha, don't jump to conclusions. Maybe he can bring me a little surprise. All right, go and dispose of the corpse. Continue to have I closely monitor his every move." After saying that, Catherine put down the empty cup in her hand. Her body quickly became light and transparent, and finally turned into a blurry spirit that passed through the wall and disappeared without a trace. "Don't worry, my dear mistress. Even if he didn't say anything, I'd still keep an eye on him." Kars muttered to himself softly, and then waved towards the door. In the blink of an eye, a hideous reptile crawled in, opened its mouth full of sharp teeth, and tore the corpse into a bloody mess. It swallowed it in a few mouthfuls. Zhang Cheng, who was more than 10 kilometers away, did not know that he was being watched. He was hiding alone in the empty basement, unplugging the cork of a bottle full of water from the well of eternity and pouring it all into a huge wooden bucket filled with clear water. In an instant, a huge amount of arcane energy erupted from the middle of the wooden bucket and forcefully pushed him a few meters away. He had to lean against the wall to prevent himself from falling. However, the explosion of energy came and went quickly. It slowly subsided in about a minute or two, leaving behind only a bucket full of water that contained pure energy. There was no doubt that this water was very similar to the water from the legendary Well of the Sun. The only difference was that at the same volume, it did not carry as much energy as the former. It was estimated to be close to half. However, for Zhang Cheng, who could not recover his mana at all, it was an almost perfect energy replenishment. Without any hesitation, he immediately closed his eyes and began to absorb the water that contained arcane energy in the wooden bucket. In just a few seconds, his mana was restored to its most abundant state. Accompanied by intense spiritual pleasure, he finally reluctantly gave up on absorbing the water. He slowly opened his eyes and laughed bitterly at himself. What an indescribable feeling. A small bottle of water from the Well of the Sun is already so fascinating. How enjoyable would it be to absorb the water from the Well of the Sun and the Well of Eternity? Looks like I have to be more careful in the future. I don't want to be infected with magical addiction. Due to his low level as a mage, Zhang Cheng did not notice any signs of the water in the bucket dropping after replenishing his mana. In order to test the limits of this so-called small mana source, he took out the prepared funnel and test tube and poured the water into the test tube continuously in case of an emergency. He only stopped to observe carefully when the water level dropped to half of its original level. He saw that the remaining half bucket of water was like a magnet, continuously absorbing the unknown energy contained in the air and converting it all into arcane energy. Gradually, the water level began to rise slowly. Although the speed was almost the same as that of a crawling snail, it would at most take 3 to 5 days to recover to its original state. At the same time, under the cover of this small mana source, the concentration of energy in the entire villa would be much higher than outside. In particular, The various herbs planted in the greenhouse would definitely grow at an incredible speed. This is great. With this energy source, I don't have to worry about the problem of replenishing my mana in the future. I can also use this to carry out some in-depth research, such as this. Zhang Cheng excitedly took out a book called Arcana and Mimicry from his bag. Although he had obtained a rather objective combat strength through the castrated mage profession template, he had never given up on the idea of continuing to learn, especially those spells that could not be mastered by players in the game. It made him even more eager to learn more. Chapter 60. As everyone knew, the mages of Azeroth relied on pure arcane energy to simulate fire and frost energy. At the same time, they could also use complex transformations to do incredible things. For example, they could transform a ferocious lion or tiger into a harmless animal, such as a pig or sheep. Of course, the mages could do more than this. As the pure energy that was nurtured at the beginning of the world, the things that arcane magic could do were far beyond the limits of any mortal's imagination. The book, Arcane Magic and Mimicry, talked about the infinite possibilities of the use of arcane energy. It even mentioned a few secret techniques that only needed a moment to transform arcane magic into other forms of energy. The most representative of this was the troll arcanist, who could control lightning. Lightning had always been the most destructive and powerful form of energy in the natural world. The goal that Zhang Cheng had set for himself was to master the technique of simulating violent lightning with arcane energy as soon as possible. Then, he would expand the scope of his skill bit by bit and strive to become a true mage as soon as possible, rather than a useless piece of trash who relied on castrated class templates to live and die. In the next 2 weeks, he completely became an otaku who did not leave the house at all. He hid in the dark basement all day and did all kinds of experiments. From time to time, he would trigger dangerous energy explosions. Fortunately, the quality of the soundproofing in the villa was not bad and did not spread outside. Otherwise, the police would definitely have come to ask what happened. In addition, the herbs in the greenhouse garden were also growing healthily under the influence of the rich energy. It was estimated that in another 3 to 5 days, the first batch of peace bloom, silverleaf, and other low-grade herbs could be harvested and used. Just as he was full of confidence and prepared to use his alchemy skills to earn the first pot of gold in the underground world, a recorded phone call disrupted all of his plans. "Hello, is this Zhang? If you hear my message, please come to the restaurant immediately. I just found something interesting that I believe you will be interested in. Also, remember to use the back door. After all, you're now a member of the underground world. It is best not to mix with ordinary people." This gloomy voice was not just anyone. It was the servant and assistant of the witch Catherine, Kars. Even though Zhang Cheng couldn't figure out why the other party would suddenly take the initiative to contact him, or what the interesting thing was, Zhang Cheng couldn't figure out. However, he still put down his research reluctantly and walked into the bathroom to take a shower. He changed into an expensive handmade suit that belonged to the previous owner of the house. Finally, he brought a few bottles of potions and a bucket of water that contained abundant arcane energy in case he needed it. As for magical equipment, he only equipped rings, necklaces, and amulets. It was better to hide things like the firestone staff that could blind people. It had to be said that this guy with the same name as Zhang Cheng was indeed quite rich. There were 3 cars in the garage alone. One of them was a cool sports car, and the other 2 were typical black business cars. Without any hesitation, he chose the fastest sports car and arrived at the entrance of the restaurant from the villa area in less than 10 minutes. However, this time, he didn't go through the main entrance. Instead, he went around to an inconspicuous little house at the back of the car park. He opened his palm and showed the tattoo to the doorman. After the latter noticed the shape of the tattoo, he was obviously shocked at first. Then, he quickly bowed and gestured. "Welcome, Sir Magus. Please come in. I believe you will be able to find anything you want here." "Thank you." Zhang Cheng thanked him politely and then walked into the pitch-black tunnel without looking back. After about 2 to 3 minutes, 2 light sources slowly appeared in front of him, followed by a third, then a fourth, and so on. It seemed as if there was no end to it. Normally, If a normal person were to encounter such a situation, they would have turned around and fled. However, as a mage, he could feel that the scene in front of him was actually just a fantasy. After another 30 or so steps, the eerie tunnel suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a spacious hall. There were about 40 guests in the hall. Some of them were pale, and their eyes flashed with a terrifying light. Anyone with a little common sense could tell that they were definitely vampires. There were also some who were dressed like cowboys in American Western movies. They even had long and thick hunting rifles on their backs. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5, drinking unknown alcohol and chatting in low voices. Although Zhang Cheng couldn't tell how many of these people were humans and how many were monsters, one thing was for sure, and that was that there were definitely no normal people. Just as he was about to walk towards Kars, who was sitting alone in the corner, a thick, black arm covered in thick hair blocked his way. Xiao Zi, if I remember correctly, you're new here, right? The one who spoke was a muscular black man who was about 35 years old. He was more than 2 meters tall, and his whole body was covered with devilish muscles. That's right. What do you want? Zhang Cheng wrinkled his nose and took 2 steps back. Of course, it wasn't because he was afraid. It was because the smell of the other party was too pungent. It almost made him vomit all the takeout he ate in the afternoon. What do I want? Of course, it's to show some concern for a newcomer like you. You should know that the underground world is very dangerous. I have decided to give you some protection out of kindness. As long as you take out $200,000, you'll be safe for a week. How is it, isn't it cheap? The black man opened his mouth, revealing a mouth full of white teeth that could be used in a toothpaste commercial. Hee. Is this considered as collecting protection fees? Zhang Qing couldn't help but laugh. As he laughed, he looked at Kars, who was sitting quietly in the corner. He seemed to be asking how he should deal with this situation. Kars shrugged nonchalantly. He raised his hand and squashed a spider that was crawling past him. What he meant was that when dealing with an ant that didn't know its own strength, he could just crush it to death. Obviously, the rules of the underground world were not like the normal world. There were a series of similar laws and law enforcement agencies. It seemed to be closer to the one with the bigger fist. The one with the bigger fist was the law. After figuring this out, Zhang Qing quickly stopped whispering and said in a slightly mocking tone, "Listen, Big Black, I don't like to use violence under normal circumstances. So, you'd better get out of here now. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that you'll still be alive after I make a move." Ha ha. God, look, this kid is threatening me. What do you think I should do? The black man turned around and asked the other customers. Go, beat him up. Yes, beat him up. Show him who's boss. Frank, do your best. I bet on you to win this time. In an instant, the originally quiet bar became lively. Chapter 61. Make way. Make way. Clear the space in the middle for them. As usual, those who bet on boar, throw your money to the left, and those who bet on the newcomer, throw your money to the right. Seeing that someone was causing trouble, the bartender did not step forward to stop it. Instead, he took the initiative to be the judge. Judging from his tone and skillful movements, this was not the first time something like this had happened. It was not an occasional occurrence, but rather it happened often. The customers were equally experienced and made their choices in the blink of an eye. However, more than 90% of them threw their money on the table on the left. Only 4 people threw their money on the table on the right. In other words, compared to Zhang Cheng, who was dressed like a successful person, they trusted the big black fool more. Only Kars crossed his arms and supported his chin. The corners of his mouth curled up as he silently watched the farce, as if he was waiting for something. Hey, kid, I'll break your arm first, then cripple your leg. Boar cracked his knuckles and threatened with a sinister smile. Shut your stinky mouth. Can we start? Zhang Cheng frowned and asked the bartender. As a person who liked to keep a low profile, he hated being watched like a monkey in a zoo. He hated this so-called bar culture even more. The bartender undoubtedly noticed the impatience in his eyes and immediately nodded. Of course, you can start at any time. But please take note, it's best not to accidentally hurt innocent people. I don't want the situation to get out of hand. Don't worry, It only takes a few seconds to clean up a piece of trash. After saying that, Zhang Cheng turned around and went to the empty space in the middle. He silently cast the frost armor spell and magic shield on himself. Although he did not feel any threat from the big black fool, nor did he feel any strong energy, he still chose to be cautious in order to avoid unexpected failure. After all, he had seen with his own eyes how the Forgotten Ones lost their lives because of their arrogance. He had always warned himself not to repeat the same mistake. Even when facing a weak enemy, he had to give it his all. Boar obviously did not have any magical perception, nor did he realize that his opponent was fully armed. He quickly activated all the muscles in his body and doubled his size in the blink of an eye. He even tore his shirt open, especially his two exaggerated arms, which crushed a table with just a little strength. Bang! He smashed a small hole in the floor with his fist and then proudly showed off. See? This was power. It's not too late to regret it now. Oof. Idiot, you know nothing about power. Seeing his opponent's transformation, Zhang Cheng couldn't help but sneer. Although he didn't know much about the underground world, he could tell at a glance that the big black fool was just a mixed-blood human with part of the monster bloodline. These fellows were basically at the bottom of the pyramid structure of the underground world. They might have some special abilities that were more dangerous, but most of them were cannon fodder. However, Frank didn't seem to think that he was cannon fodder at all. Instead, he thought that he was very strong. He continued to show off. Noob, don't talk nonsense. When my fist smashes into your face, you'll understand what a big mistake you've made. Then what are we waiting for? Let's begin. Zhang Cheng's hands suddenly emitted a dazzling silver light. After half a month of research, he could now skillfully convert arcane energy into electricity. This was a good opportunity to test its power. Damn it, don't even think about it. Frank roared as he grabbed a chair and threw it out, trying to interrupt the gathering of electricity that was getting stronger and stronger. Perhaps he was very stupid and greedy, but he wasn't stupid. He knew what would happen to him if he was hit by the terrifying electric arc. Unfortunately, before the flying chair could reach its target, it was blocked by an invisible force half a meter away and bounced off and rolled to the side. At the same time, Zhang Cheng had just finished his preparations. He said in a meaningful tone, "Sorry, the game is over." As soon as he finished speaking, the terrifying energy in his hands instantly turned into a dazzling lightning, and with a bang, it hit the big black fool in the chest. The latter fell to the ground, his whole body twitching nonstop. Especially the part that was directly hit, there were traces of charred charcoal, and even the air was filled with a pungent smell of burnt flesh. Silence. Everyone in the hall seemed to have been hit by a spell. They were all dumbfounded, as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. There were also some who had deep reverence and fear in their eyes, and they all lowered their heads, not daring to make eye contact with Zhang Cheng's sharp eyes. Only a few female vampires in revealing clothes licked their lips, showing off their seductive figures to their heart's content, not hiding their desire for blood that was filled with magic. The strange atmosphere lasted for a full minute before Kars slowly stood up. He applauded and praised. What a powerful attack. I haven't seen a magus who can control energy as well as you in many years. Moreover, you're still so young. The lady is right. You do have the potential to become a lord. Thank you for your praise, but I have a small question. Why didn't you stand up earlier and stop this idiot? Zhang Cheng narrowed his eyes and questioned. It's very simple. First of all, if you want to gain status in the underground world, the only way is to display your strength. Now, please look at their expressions, and you'll know how respected you are. I guarantee that from now on, no one in this place will dare to find trouble with you. Secondly, Frank is an annoying fellow. I've always wanted to find an opportunity to teach him a lesson, so why should I stop him from seeking his own death? Lastly, and most importantly, I have a mission on hand. Before I hand him over to you, I hope to have a rough understanding of your abilities. Kars explained calmly. Mission. Zhang Cheng subconsciously frowned. His mind was filled with all sorts of arcane research that was difficult to understand, and he didn't want to accept any bullsh asterisk team missions. Yes, a mission. Not only will there be generous rewards, but it will also be directly related to you. Come, let's talk inside. Kars turned and walked towards the exit on the right side of the bar. However, before he could take a few steps, Zhang Cheng pointed at the motionless big black fool on the floor and asked, "How do we deal with this corpse?" Chapter 62. What? He's still alive? Zhang Cheng turned his head in surprise and stared at the motionless Frank lying on the ground. Others might not know how powerful the lightning was, but he had done the test before. Even a werewolf, who was known for its strong recovery ability, would die on the spot if struck by it, let alone a mixed-blood human. The moment the lightning struck, the contact area would be burned at a temperature of more than 1,000 degrees Celsius. The entire chest cavity, including the heart and lungs, would rapidly deteriorate and eventually lead to the target's death. The power of lightning was so terrifying that humans had been in awe of its power since a long time ago. In many myths and legends, only the most powerful gods had the right to use it as a weapon. But now there was a guy who took a lightning bullhead on and was still alive. Zhang Cheng felt that his worldview, outlook on life, and values had been severely impacted. He quickly came to the side of the corpse and bent down to carefully examine the chest that was emitting a strong, burnt smell. He discovered a shocking scene. He saw that the originally completely carbonized muscles, skin, and bones were regenerating at an extremely slow speed. It was as if a mysterious force was constantly causing the remaining healthy cells to divide and grow. The damaged parts were falling off bit by bit. In less than 3 to 5 minutes, bright red muscle tissue had grown in many places. Although the heart had not started beating again, it was basically certain that the big black fool was not dead. It would not take long for him to wake up again. Such a unique physique aroused Zhang Cheng's strong curiosity and desire to study it. He completely ignored the horrified gazes of the people around him and took out a wooden box filled with scalpels, tweezers, test tubes, needles, and other tools from his suit pocket. He tore off a large amount of tissue around the wound as a sample and then drew a tube of blood. Only then did he stand up in satisfaction. It had to be said that his behavior just now was like that of a mad Frankenstein monster. It scared the customers in the bar quite a bit. After all, those who could sit here and drink more or less had some special ability or bloodline. But none of them were willing to be studied. Seeing that Zhang Cheng's behavior was getting more and more ridiculous, Kars's mouth twitched as he reminded him, "Zhang, that's enough. If you're interested in Frank's bloodline, you can order him to slowly study it at your house. I believe he won't dare to refuse, but we have more important things to do now." "What is his bloodline?" Zhang Cheng, whose curiosity was completely piqued, ignored the other party's urging and continued to ask with great interest. Damn it! No one knew exactly what his bloodline was, but I believe that he was either a toad monster or a troll monster. In any case, there weren't many creatures with such strong recovery abilities. "All right, hurry up and follow me. Ralph, you too." Kars forcefully pulled Zhang Cheng's arm and waved at the middle-aged white man who was drinking and chatting with his friends not far away. The latter heard his call and quickly put down his cup. He carried a hunting rifle engraved with mysterious silver symbols and followed him. The three of them quickly passed through the back door of the bar and arrived at a single room that was only about 10 square meters. The middle-aged man named Ralph closed the door and bowed slightly. Carefully, he asked, "Master Witch Doctor, do you have any instructions for me?" "Wait here." Kars ignored him and took out a few photos from his pocket and threw them on the table. "Zhang, take a look. I'll tell you what the mission is after you're done." Zhang Cheng picked up the photos with a baffled look. As soon as he took a look, he was immediately attracted to the person in the photos. At the same time, a chilling light flashed in his eyes. He asked directly, "Who is this guy? Where is he hiding?" "Ah, it seems like you still remember him, right?" Kars smiled and shrugged. "Don't worry. So far, I only know that his name is Salus. He's a werewolf leader who smuggled himself into America from Latvia not long ago. He might be the one behind the recent series of attacks on ordinary people. Your mission is to find him and get to the bottom of this matter. As a reward, I'll pay you 30 gold dinars first and another 30 gold dinars after that." "All right, I'll accept this mission." Zhang Chung agreed on the spot without any hesitation. However, he was not doing this for the gold dinars, but for revenge. He wanted to make the bastard who led his men to chase him for a few streets and almost killed him pay the price. Hee hee, I knew you wouldn't reject me. Here are 30 gold dinars. At the same time, I'll arrange some assistance for you. As he spoke, Carlos looked at the middle-aged man who was standing still. Ralph, your mission with your teammates is to assist Zhang in finding the guy in the photos. As for how to deal with him, it's entirely up to him. As for this mission, I'll give you a price of $1 million. Any objections? No. It's our honor to serve you and Her Excellency the Witch. Also, I've seen the abilities of this young Mr. Magus. I definitely wouldn't dare to have any improper thoughts. Ralph lowered his head and promised solemnly. Perhaps in the eyes of outsiders, the same job should be paid the same. Even if there was a difference, it should not be 10 times or even 100 times. However, he was very clear that the underground world was never a place that emphasized fairness. It was a hunting ground that followed the law of the jungle and survival of the fittest. For mixed-blood magic hunters, like them, who did not have any special abilities, it was impossible for them to earn gold dinars. As long as they could earn a few dollars to improve their lives, they would be very satisfied. Carlos nodded his head in satisfaction. Very good. Let's get moving. The lady will await your reply. After saying this, he stood up and left the room, disappearing into the dim underground tunnel. After Carlos left, Ralph's tense nerves relaxed a little. He turned his head and said with a smile, Mr. Magus, if you don't mind, can you return to the bar with me? I need to introduce you to my teammates. No problem. However, before that, I have a question. What do you guys do? Do you have any special abilities? Zhang Chung looked at him with a curious gaze. As a mage, he could clearly feel that there was some mysterious energy in his body. Although it was very weak, it gave off a dangerous feeling. Chapter 63. Magic Symbols? Attached Energy? Zhang Chung sharply grasped the two key words. In fact, on the Azeroth continent, mages also used all kinds of symbols that were filled with magic to buff items with additional attributes. The High Elves had even invented a technique to create weapons out of pure energy. The famous Silver Dawn Avenger and Tibu's Scorching Longsword in the game were some of the best examples of this. Their specialty was to use the impact of the energy eruption to cause fatal burns of different attributes to enemies. Although they weren't as sharp as metal, their destructive power was a lot higher than metal, especially when it came to elementals, shadows, souls, and other special life forms that didn't have a fixed form. They could often cause several times more damage than normal weapons. Zhang Chung hoped that through the different magic symbols and the technique of attaching energy, he could find the similarities between the two worlds or establish some kind of connection. He always felt that there was a secret behind that mysterious parchment. It was a secret about why he was thrown into this familiar yet strange world. If he wanted to uncover it, he had to continue to research and explore. Ralph obviously didn't know what Zhang Chung was thinking. He took out a silver-plated dagger and injected a little bit of energy into it. Instantly, a mysterious energy that couldn't be detected by the naked eye quickly formed a closed loop around the sharp edge of the dagger through the dozen or so symbols engraved on it. After the energy flow stabilized, he smiled and explained, "Look, this is my ability. Normally, any silver-plated dagger that has been specially treated can cause a lot of damage to creatures of darkness, such as werewolves, vampires, and ghosts. After I strengthen the dagger, it can cause a huge explosion when it pierces into the target's body, just like this." As soon as he finished speaking, this middle-aged man swung the dagger and stabbed it into the table. In the next second, boom, along with the bright fire, a fist-sized hole appeared on the hardwood table. The carbonized area around the table was still burning, and the high temperature could be clearly felt from a few meters away. Zhang Chung first stretched out his right hand and gently touched the scorching burn mark. Then, he picked up the dagger that had lost its energy. Soon, he seemed to understand something. He raised his head and asked, "Where did you learn these symbols on the dagger?" You might not believe it, But these symbols suddenly appeared in my mind when I was 14 years old and had sex with my first girlfriend for the first time. I've asked some knowledgeable wizards before, but none of them seemed to be able to recognize the meaning of these symbols. In the end, they defined it as a bloodline inheritance. In other words, my special bloodline allowed me to store a portion of my knowledge in my genes and pass it on to my descendants. It was said that only those powerful ancient races that had gone extinct could do this. Of course, as you can see, I'm neither powerful nor special. I can only rely on these little tricks to make a living as a magic hunter. Ralph's tone revealed a hint of self-mockery when he talked about this. After all, in the special profession of a magic hunter, it was already difficult for someone like him, who was no different from an ordinary person, to just barely survive. If he was careless and encountered a slightly stronger monster, he could very well lose his life. Zhang Cheng silently observed the mysterious symbols on the surface of the dagger. Then, he filtered and compared them with the symbols used by Azeroth in his mind. After a short while, he found a few similarities. First, in terms of energy, there was close to an eighth of the symbols that were very similar. Secondly, he tried to infuse arcane energy into the dagger. Although he did not manage to form a closed circuit, there was a certain degree of resonance. This meant that in terms of energy, the two worlds had something in common. Lastly, the meager amount of energy stored in Ralph's body was similar to arcane energy. There was a huge amount of plasticity and could be simulated into many forms. It was just that he did not understand it. He had only subconsciously chosen the violent flame blast. After understanding this, Zhang Cheng smiled and shook his head as he explained, "No, Ralph, the bloodline flowing in your body is far more powerful than you think. Do you know? Energy is a very mysterious substance. Everyone has a part of it in their body, but those who can truly control it are pitifully few. But not only can you store energy in your body, you can also control it to form energy and release it." "You mean, I'm very special?" Ralph's eyes immediately shone with a terrifying light. "Ha, that's right. You're very special. You even have some kind of potential. If you're willing, you can come to my place and help me with a little research. In return, I'll teach you how to control energy and let it have more variations. For example, frost." After saying this, Zhang Cheng's right hand released a white frost and completely froze the table that was still emitting sparks. Although half a month of research and practice was not enough to raise his level as a mage, he had become much more proficient in controlling energy. "I can also have this kind of ability?" Ralph stared at the frozen wooden table in shock. Zhang Cheng nodded without hesitation. "Yes. How about it? Do you want to cooperate with my research?" "Do you still need to ask?" "Of course I agree. Thank you, young Mr. Adept. You have given me a new hope," Ralph replied in an emotional tone. He could feel that his originally calm heart was once again restless, thirsting for the thing called power. After all, in the underground world, power meant authority, wealth, and almost everything. "Very good. Then it's a deal. Now, for me to see your teammates. Who knows, there might be a few among them that I'm interested in." After getting the answer he wanted, Zhang Cheng's lips curled up slightly, and a trace of undetectable playfulness flashed across his face. The other party would never know how dangerous his research was, and even more so, how terrifying the results would be. "Ha ha, please follow me. I believe that they will definitely fight to be the first to show off their abilities in order to gain your favor." "Oh, right. Regarding this mission, do you have any instructions?" Ralph pushed open the door and led the way as he asked excitedly. "No, it's nothing. I don't have much experience in tracking, so I'll leave it to you guys. I'm only in charge of dealing with this guy in the picture. We still have a score to settle between us." Zhang Cheng lowered his head and glanced at the picture in his hand, his eyes emitting a chilling light. Chapter 64. Late at night, in a dilapidated alley in North Brooklyn that was filled with gangs, drugs, and crime, two tall Caucasian men were nervously observing their surroundings. Every once in a while, they could not help but turn back to look at the dilapidated house behind them, as if waiting for something. They did not notice that there were a few people watching their every move from the top of a 3-story building 50 meters away. "How is it? Has the target appeared?" Zhang Qing asked without raising his head as he flipped through the old notebook in his hand. It had been about 10 hours since he accepted the mission. With the help of Ralph, the local tyrant, he finally found some clues about the target. It was the dilapidated house, not far away. According to the clues provided by a homeless man who slept next to a dustbin, there were terrifying biting sounds and ear-piercing howls coming from the house in recent weeks. There was even a pungent smell of blood near the door. These were all characteristics of werewolves when they gathered. It was obvious that most of the werewolves who lived in New York had registered their identities under the various lords. They would definitely not risk being punished and banished to gather together and cause trouble. Therefore, this nest of werewolves must be from outside. The werewolf leader called Sakas might be hiding inside. As for the notebook in his hand, it was a research record made by Ralph when he first awakened his ability. There were about 2,500 mysterious symbols. Only a few of them had a brief explanation beside them. Ralph himself only understood the combination of explosion. It had to be said that when Zhang Cheng received the notebook, the first thought that popped up in his mind was what a waste of God's gift. That was right. Even if he had not deciphered the meaning and function of any of the symbols, just by looking at the 2,500 symbols that could produce magic resonance, he could tell that this was an extremely complex system. It was not much worse than the research results of the Dalaran mages, and might even be more powerful. However, Ralph stopped his in-depth research after casually coming up with an explosion combination. He picked up the shotgun that he had modified himself and embarked on his journey. He earned a lot of money through accepting missions to improve his poor and destitute life. Perhaps it was just as the saying goes, poverty would greatly limit a person's vision and imagination. Many times, the poor did not even know how precious the things they had given up were. After all, they had already done their best to survive. How could they have the energy to think about the future? Ralph did not notice the pity in Zhang Cheng's eyes as he replied in a low voice, "Not yet, but I can already confirm that the two guys at the door are definitely werewolves." "Yes. If they aren't werewolves, I'll eat the socks on my feet that haven't been washed for 3 days," a young man in his early 20s chimed in. "Oh, how did you identify them? Why can't I see it at all?" Zhang Qing closed the notes and asked curiously. No matter what, he was still a standard newbie in the underground world and had no experience at all. Now that he met an expert, he naturally had to ask for clarification. Mr. Wizard, it's easy to identify a werewolf. Please pay attention to their arms. Due to their frequent transformations, all werewolves had a habit of placing their arms in front of their bodies and not at their sides like normal humans. Other than that, werewolves also rely heavily on their sensitive sense of smell and would often twitch their noses. Usually, if a person has both of these characteristics, then he is without a doubt a werewolf. Another young mixed-blood girl came over and explained. Zhang Qing nodded thoughtfully. "I see. Then how long do we have to wait?" "We have already waited for 6 hours since the evening. If the target doesn't appear, do we have to continue waiting?" "No, there's no need for that. If the target doesn't appear after midnight, then we will initiate the attack and capture a few captives for interrogation. Although werewolves are known for their loyalty to their tribe, we can still obtain some information from those weak-willed fellows if we spend some time." Ralph's face revealed a cruel expression as he spoke. Without a doubt, what he meant was to torture the werewolf repeatedly and cruelly until the werewolf could no longer withstand the torture and spoke of his own accord. At that time, the werewolf's strong self-recovery ability would not be able to save them. Instead, it would become a terrifying burden. Many outstanding interrogators had to consider the age, health, and psychological endurance of the captives when they were torturing them. This was to prevent the captives from suddenly dying or having a mental breakdown in the middle of the interrogation. However, werewolves did not need that. As long as they were not killed directly, they would recover in a very short period of time, no matter how serious their injuries were. Zhang Cheng raised his arm and looked at his watch. He smiled and said, "All right, there's still 10 minutes to midnight. I hope that the guy in the picture will appear. Otherwise, We'll have to go around and ask for information again. It's not easy to earn 60 gold dinars. Yeah, it's not easy. Ralph's mouth kept twitching as he lowered his head and agreed against his will. Actually, what he wanted to say was, "You're still being picky with 60 gold dinars. If you give me this price, you even dare to assassinate the President of America." In fact, this middle-aged man had been in the underground world for many years, but he had never received any missions that paid gold dinars. Most of the time, he earned USD. If someone really gave him a mission that paid gold dinars, he would choose to give up. The reason was simple. A high reward meant a high risk. He did not want to die in some unknown corner because of a moment of greed. Time flew by, and 10 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. Just as the Magic Hunter team was about to leave the roof and launch a surprise attack on the old house, a black truck suddenly drove out from the corner and stopped in front of the old house. The two fellows guarding the door did not say anything and immediately ran to open the back door. They dragged out 4 young girls with their mouths taped shut. Zhang Cheng recognized one of them. It was the white girl who had blocked the entrance of the apartment a few days ago and demanded him to tell her who killed her sister. Hee, tonight's goods are not bad. Where did you get them? The slightly fatter werewolf stuck out his tongue and licked the face of a frightened girl. The usual place, especially her. She actually dared to rush into our hunting ground and tried to kill me with a revolver. Another werewolf jumped out from the driver's seat and pointed at his blood-stained shirt. Ha ha, interesting. You were forced to transform by a little girl? Shut up. I can guarantee you that she's a complete lunatic. She didn't even say anything when she rushed in and pulled the trigger. I swear, I'll show her who's boss later. Calm down. The leader needs 20 virgins to complete the ritual. Before that, no one is allowed to touch her. Do you understand? Chapter 65. Looking at the 3 werewolves forcefully dragging the girls into the old house, Zhang Cheng, who was hiding nearby, suddenly lowered his voice and asked, "How do you usually deal with normal people during missions? For example, if they see something they shouldn't see?" Normally, there are 2 ways to deal with it. The first is to get rid of them and solve any problems that may arise in the future once and for all. The other is to become a confidential person and make them swear that they will never tell a third party. Once they tell you, you have to kill them and the people who know about it. Otherwise, the council will send assassins to deal with the whole thing, including you. Ralph licked his dry lips and replied. Judging from his flickering eyes, he must have used the first method the most. Confidential person? Interesting. Zhang Cheng had a faint smile on his face. He stood still and did not give the order to attack, nor did he choose to retreat. The young mixed-blood girl seemed to have thought of something and subconsciously shivered. She carefully asked, "Mr. Wizard, are you waiting for the werewolves to kill those girls?" "Oh, do I look that cold-blooded?" Zhang Cheng asked in a half-joking tone. "No, that's not what I meant." The black girl quickly shook her head. After all, she did not want to offend a powerful and temperamental wizard for a total stranger. Zhang Cheng shrugged nonchalantly. "You can think whatever you want. Anyway, I just want to do a little test. I believe you have heard a lot of descriptions of fate. According to the explanation of theology, mortals are always controlled by an invisible hand. No matter if it's success or failure, it's all part of fate. Even birth, old age, sickness, and death are all part of fate. No one can change it. Today, I want to know how many of those girls would have died, and how many would have survived if we had entered a little later. If they were all alive or all dead, it means that fate is not something that mortals can change, because my interference didn't change their fated ending at all. However, if some of them died and some of them survived because of my intervention, it means that fate can be interfered with to a certain extent. But how do you know that the part that lives and the part that dies is not fate?" The Negro girl asked a sharp question, frowning. Good question. To be honest, I have no way to prove it. I can only judge based on my feelings through repeated attempts. All right, let's stop chatting. It's time to go in and see what these foreign werewolves are up to. After saying that, Zhang Cheng took the initiative to end the topic. He quickly blessed himself with a magical shield and led the way to the entrance. As a transmigrator who had been thrown into a strange world by a mysterious force, he had always felt uneasy. It was as if everything around him lacked a sense of reality, and he always felt that someone or God was secretly plotting everything. After walking along the narrow and dark alley for about 10 meters, Ralph suddenly stopped and made a tactical gesture to his teammates. The mixed-race girl did not say anything. She quickly pinched the bone necklace around her neck and mumbled something. In the blink of an eye, a black translucent leopard appeared out of thin air beside her. Its two green eyes gave off an illusion of ferocity and thirst. She gently stroked the leopard's forehead and ordered in a low voice, "Go. Karak, make a big commotion." "Woo," the leopard growled as a response. Its body quickly faded and finally disappeared without a trace. About 2 to 3 minutes later, there was a sudden scream from the old house. Following that, there was a loud roar. "Damn it, I'm being attacked. There's a big cat in the house. Find it quickly." "What? Are you kidding? This is New York, not a big forest filled with wild animals. How can there be a big commotion?" Before the other person could finish his words, he immediately let out a scream and then cursed. F***CK. There's really a big cat. Quick, catch it. Here, I see it. It's running towards the basement. A wolf. Along with the loud wolf howls, there were sounds of banging and banging in the old house. It was obvious that all the werewolves had transformed. It was Zhang Cheng's first time seeing the black girl's ability. He smiled and praised. "Well done. If I'm not wrong, your necklace has an animal spirit living in it, right?" The latter smiled and nodded. "Yes. It's called Karak. It's said to be my grandmother's grandmother, the companion of a powerful witch doctor. However, with the development of technology, no one in the family was willing to learn the ancient ways of the witch doctor. In the end, it was lost. I found a necklace by chance when I was tidying up the storeroom. In the end, I succeeded in summoning Karak on my first try. After that, the captain invited me to join his team and became a magic hunter. It's all in the past. Let's go. Let's take care of these bastards who are causing trouble everywhere," Ralph said as he opened the box and took out a shotgun. He then led the way in with a ferocious smile. In less than 2 seconds, a violent gunshot broke the silence of the night. Bang! The unlucky guy who was hit flew into the air and crashed into the wall behind him. The enchanted silver-plated bullet opened up a bloody hole the size of an adult's fist in his chest. The heart in his chest was long gone. He breathed his last on the spot. Intruders. Intruders. The werewolves were not idiots. After hearing the gunshot, they immediately realized what had happened and ran towards the main door from all directions. Staring at these tall fellows with mouths full of sharp teeth, Ralph calmly reloaded his gun and waved his hand behind him. A young man in his early 20s clenched his fists and took a step forward. He opened his mouth and let out an inaudible sound wave. Instantly, all the glass in the house shattered. The werewolves stopped and lay on the ground in pain while covering their ears. At this moment, their sensitive hearing became a burden again. On the other hand, Zhang Cheng, who was a pure human, did not feel anything. Chapter 66. Goodbye, little wolf pups. Ralph drew out his silver-plated dagger and finished off a few young werewolves who had been severely injured by the icicle spell in the blink of an eye. His movements were swift and precise, without a hint of hesitation or pity. After he was done, he rubbed the blood off his dagger on the corpses and raised his shotgun to aim at the enemies charging at him. He pulled the trigger once more. Bang! Bang! Another werewolf who had jumped down the stairs fell to the ground. Dark red liquid quickly gathered together to form a large pool of blood. If an ordinary person saw this, they would definitely let out an ear-piercing scream. However, the members of the Magic Hunter team seemed to be used to this. Be it the experienced Ralph or the other two youths, none of them showed any abnormal reactions. They each used their abilities to either restrain or kill the endless stream of werewolves that surged out from the basement and the second floor. All Zhang Cheng had to do was stand at the back of the team and cast frostbolts, fireballs, and occasionally a few arcane missiles to keep the enemies at a safe distance. After depleting about a third of the magic stored in his body, The entire old house finally quieted down. Other than the occasional groaning of one or two heavily injured werewolves, no new werewolves appeared. At this moment, the living room was littered with corpses. At least 25 werewolves had died on the spot. There were also 4 lucky ones who had avoided fatal injuries but were crippled. Of course, the so-called lucky ones were still alive. Unfortunately, surviving did not mean that they would have good luck, because what awaited them next was a series of inhumane torture to extort a confession. Smelling the pungent smell of blood in the air, Zhang Cheng frowned slightly. He asked in an uncertain tone, "What do we do now? Clean up these corpses?" No need. The cleaners will naturally take care of the corpses. We just have to make a call when we leave. What we need to do is to search every corner of the house to ensure that no one has escaped. At the same time, we need to find out why so many werewolves have gathered together. Ralph gave his teammates a look. The black girl led her leopard to the basement, while the young man who could emit infrasonic waves went to the second floor alone. As for himself, he searched room by room along the corridor on the first floor. Because the old house was not big, after only 3 to 5 minutes, the black girl shouted from below, "Hey, you better come down and take a look. I seem to have discovered something incredible." "What is it?" Zhang Cheng asked as he walked down the dirty stairs into the basement. In an instant, he was completely stunned by the scene in front of him. In the dark and narrow basement, there were more than a dozen wooden crosses, each with a naked girl on it. Most of them had been dead for some time, and their corpses emitted a faint stench. Only the expressions left on their faces told of the pain and torture they had suffered before they died. As for the cause of death, well, Zhang Cheng was not sure if these girls had died from excessive shock, or from excessive blood loss due to the nails piercing their limbs, or for being raped to death. Anyway, their deaths were extremely tragic. Even Ralph, who had seen many things, could not hold back his anger. He gritted his teeth and cursed. Sage asterisk T. These bastards should really go to hell. Why would the werewolves do this? Although the werewolves that we have seen before were bloodthirsty and even succumbed to their beastly nature, they have never had the hobby of torturing and torturing, the black girl said while covering her nose. Zhang Cheng suppressed his disgust and went closer to check the corpses. Soon, he pointed at the abdomen of the corpses and guessed with an uncertain tone, "I think it might be for fertility. Please observe carefully. This female corpse has obvious wrinkles on her abdomen. This means that she had just given birth to a child before she died." "You mean these werewolves are using ordinary women to reproduce their offspring?" "Not only that, they must have other motives. Otherwise, they would not have tortured the pregnant women to death after giving birth. They could have continued to make them pregnant and give birth." Also, the 2 werewolves at the door mentioned that their leader needed 20 virgins to complete the ritual. "I think it might be related to the ritual," Zhang Cheng said as he walked around the basement twice. Suddenly, he felt that the placement of the crosses was very orderly. To prove his theory, he picked up a wrench and connected the crosses with a straight line. Before he finished drawing, Ralph shouted, "Oh my God, this is a sacrifice." "Sacrifice?" Zhang Cheng raised his head abruptly. "Yes, it's a sacrifice. Sacrificing the souls of tortured women to the devil. Through such a ritual, the devil can inject the evil energy of hell into the body of a newborn baby, allowing it to gain great strength and grow rapidly. The Parliament had banned such practices a few hundred years ago. I didn't expect them to be so daring," Ralph explained while trembling. In the underground world, angels and devils were not creatures of legends. They really existed. These 2 special species from another world had discovered Earth tens of thousands of years ago. They opened a teleportation gate and tried to modify the planet according to their wishes. In the end, it led to a destructive war. In that war, countless ancient civilizations and races on Earth disappeared. The devils and angels were also severely injured. In the end, the remaining 3 parties reached a peace agreement. According to the agreement, the angels and devils could influence humans through seduction, deception, and persuasion. However, they were not allowed to use force. At the same time, their numbers were strictly limited. This was especially true for the devils who were chaotic and evil. They would purposely leave behind books that recorded evil rituals so that those who desired power, wealth, power, and beauty would be fooled. Even though Zhang Cheng had yet to see a real demon, according to the reference given by the underground world, even the weakest demon was comparable to a lord. If this matter involved demons, then it was undoubtedly beyond the scope of his abilities. Mr. Magus, I think it's best to inform Madame Catherine. Devils are not easy to deal with. Ralph reminded in a low voice. All right, bring along a captive and let's retreat. Zhang Cheng hesitated for a few seconds before making a decision. Although killing his enemies with his own hands was a delightful thing, it seemed that it was not possible for the time being. Chapter 67. Save me. Just as everyone was about to leave the basement, a weak voice came from behind them. A girl who had just been dragged in by the werewolf was twisting her body and trying to sit up. Her consciousness was not very clear, and her pupils were not focused at all. It was just a reaction driven by a strong desire to live. The other three were much worse. They were still lying in the corner with their eyes closed. It looked like they had been injected with some sort of sedative or anesthetic. Ralph quickly stopped and turned around to ask, Mr. Magus, do you need me to get rid of her? Get rid of her? Why would you have such a scary thought? Zhang Cheng pretended to be surprised and raised his eyebrows. Due to his transmigration, regardless of whether it was the residents of Azeroth or this world, he maintained an extremely indifferent attitude towards them. He could even watch a group of innocent people being killed without doing anything. However, this did not mean that he liked killing, especially when there were no benefits to killing. Then what do you mean? Ralph, who had wanted to flatter Leylin but had failed, had an awkward expression on his face. It's very simple. Take her with you. Treat it as a reward for her strong desire to live. You have to understand that all strong emotions are a manifestation of inner strength, and I am a person who respects strength. After saying this, Zhang Cheng walked out without looking back. However, before he had even taken a few steps, the black girl could not help but shout, Sir, what about the other three girls? Should we take them with us? No, leave them here to fend for themselves. I only save those who are willing to use their actions to prove that they haven't given up. As for those who have given up on their desire to live, they aren't worth my time. Zhang Cheng shrugged nonchalantly, once again displaying his cold side. Temperamental. This was the most direct impression that the Magus hunters had of this young Magus. They could not understand Zhang Cheng's principles at all. They could not understand his severe lack of security and his lack of concern. When a person has no sense of security, they will be more neurotic. When a person has no worries, they will be very casual and even don't care about anything. Based on the above situation, from a psychological point of view, it could be said that he was suffering from a serious mental illness. If he didn't receive timely guidance or treatment, he might do crazy things in the future. Fortunately, Zhang Cheng still had something that he was very concerned about, and that was endless knowledge and unparalleled power. Just as the black girl bent down to help the unconscious girl up, the ground suddenly shook without warning. Following that, the corpses nailed to the cross opened their mouths one after another, emitting a creepy sound. In less than a minute, countless faces of pain and despair appeared on the ground and walls. One of the faces had a terrifying red light in its eyes. It opened its mouth and roared, How dare you, lowly mortals? How dare you steal the offering that belongs to me, the great Borun? With the sound echoing in his ears, the door to the basement was slammed shut, as if it had been welded shut from the outside. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't open it. Damn it! Ralph, who had failed to open the door after more than 10 attempts, gritted his teeth and cursed. In the end, he helplessly raised his shotgun and prepared to fight to the death. Based on his experience as a mage hunter for more than 10 years, he knew very well that if a true demon appeared, he would most likely die here today. But even if he was going to die, he wouldn't just sit there and wait for death. Instead, he would ruthlessly bite off a piece of flesh from his opponent before he was killed. In contrast, the reactions of the two youths in the team were much worse. Their bodies trembled nonstop, as if they had been completely frightened by the little tricks played by the demon and had lost the will to resist. Zhang Cheng silently observed the terrifying scene around him. Not only did he not show any fear, he even laughed out loud. As he laughed, he teased, "Burun, is that your name, demon? If I'm not wrong, you haven't even obtained permission to enter this world. Why do you have to spout nonsense?" "Oomph. Even if my body can't enter this world, it's more than enough to deal with lowly beings like you. If you don't want to die, then put down my sacrifice. Otherwise, I'll let you taste pain and despair." Seeing that his weakness had been exposed, the demon didn't relax his tone. Instead, he continued to issue threats. "Oh, is that true? Could it be that your so-called pain and despair is just using corpses and illusions to scare people?" Zhang Cheng mercilessly mocked. One had to know that if any angel or demon wanted to descend into the human world, the only way was through the teleportation gates left behind from ancient times. These two teleportation gates were completely under the supervision of the council. They had to go through strict screening and approval before they were allowed to pass through after they were confirmed that they wouldn't cause too much harm. All in all, the total number of angels and demons active in the world didn't exceed 400. Furthermore, they were scattered all over the world. They weren't enough to pose the slightest threat to the powerful council. If a demon didn't obtain permission, then he wouldn't be able to display his true strength. Those that were summoned through various evil rituals were at most projections or clones of consciousness. Their strength wasn't even a tenth of the original bodies. "Very good. Mortal, you've successfully infuriated me. Now, I'll show you what true strength is." The demon flew into a rage out of humiliation and began to gather the cold and evil resentment in the basement. In a short few seconds, the corpses started to twitch, slowly growing horns and claws. Their pale skin turned dark red, as if they were being cooked. Seeing this, Ralph immediately warned loudly, "Be careful. Mr. Magus, these are corpses. Don't let them get close, or else." Before he could finish, a female corpse pounced towards Zhang Cheng, bearing her fangs and claws. Just as the two were about to come into contact, the corpse suddenly swelled up and exploded with a boom. The scorching flames engulfed everything within a radius of a few meters. "Ah, arrogant human, do you know the power of the great Borun now? Don't worry, I'll take your soul and slowly torture it in hell for 100 years. The demon laughed wildly without restraint. However, this laughter only lasted for less than 5 seconds before it came to an abrupt end. This was because he realized that he couldn't find any traces of souls in the basement. Chapter 68. Laugh. Why aren't you laughing? Weren't you planning to take my soul back to hell and torture it for 100 years? Accompanied by disdainful ridicule, the scorching flames gradually dissipated, revealing a completely unharmed Zhang Cheng. To be exact, not only was he unscathed, even the suit he was wearing did not have a single trace of burn. This was because a layer of orange-red energy shield protected him from top to bottom. The slightest bit of flame that came close would immediately be absorbed and decomposed. Obviously, this was the protective flame barrier commonly used by Azeroth's mages. As long as the high temperature of the flames from the explosion did not exceed the threshold of the barrier, then even if the caster jumped into the magma, he would not be harmed. In fact, the moment the female corpse began to move, Zhang Cheng noticed that there was a strong flame energy being injected into the corpse. Out of vigilance, he quietly released a protective flame barrier, but he did not expect that it was this vigilance that saved him from the disaster. Even without the protection of the barrier, he could still use Blink to escape the range of the explosion, but it was always good to have one more trump card before the enemy really showed up. The demon's face that appeared on the wall surprisingly did not refute. It only stared at him with 2 chilling eyes. After about 3 to 5 seconds, it suddenly revealed a strange smile and praise in a low voice. "Interesting. Too interesting. The energy that you use to release the spell is a type of energy that I have never seen before, and it is full of infinite plasticity. Young wizard, do you want to sign a contract with me, and let us make a deal that will benefit both of us?" "Oomph. A demon's deal? Sorry, I'm not interested. Zhang Cheng refused without thinking. Not to mention the many negative rumors about the demon race. Just the fact that the other party had wanted to kill him half a minute ago was enough to make him unwilling to make any deal with them. Don't be in a hurry to refuse, young man. You have no idea how much forbidden knowledge I have in my hands, including extending life and reviving the dead. As long as you hand over everything related to that mysterious energy, I will give it all to you. The demon who called himself Burun continued to tempt him. Sorry. First, I will never make a deal with an enemy. Second, I am not interested in your proposal. Third, I will banish you from this world now. Goodbye, Burun. I hope you can quickly pass the approval procedures of the council and appear in front of me in your true form. Then I can kill you with my own hands. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhang Cheng took out a runestone from his pocket and activated the holy energy stored within. In the blink of an eye, a golden light was emitted from within the rune, Tessest, and a female corpse that was hit by the light trembling uncontrollably. After 10 seconds or so, they would start burning, and finally turn into ashes. As for the demon, he screamed and cursed. Ah! You? T. If your power is half as good as your mouth, I'm afraid I'll have to find a place to hide, right? The demon's curses did not last long. When the golden energy had completely purified the entire basement, it disappeared. There was no doubt that the golden rune did not store the arcane energy that mages were proficient in, but the holy energy that priests and paladins mastered. Because Azeroth had just experienced the undead scourge and the invasion of the Burning Legion, many priests and paladins were working overtime to make this kind of rune in order to prevent similar situations from happening again. As long as you had the money, any church could buy it. Of course, due to the special nature of the holy energy, this rune was only effective against races with strong evil tendencies, such as the undead and the demons of the Burning Legion. As for the demons of this world, Zhang Cheng had never tried it before, so he was not too sure. But after seeing the desecration of the corpses, he immediately confirmed that the holy energy was the natural enemy of the demons. The result was not unexpected. Just an ordinary runestone with holy energy was enough to banish them from this world. It's over. Looking at the thick pile of ashes beside him, Ralph asked with some uncertainty. Yes, it's over. Let's go. Don't forget to bring a living captive. It seems that the leader of the werewolves was planning something big. After all, privately summoning a demon is a serious crime. According to the highest standards of the law, it's enough for a capital punishment. Zhang Cheng said as he kicked open the basement's exit door. Hell, heaven, parliament. There were also lords with powerful supernatural powers, monsters, and countless mixed-blood humans. It was only at this moment that he truly realized how deep the waters of the underground world were. Although the mage template provided him with considerable combat power, so that he would not be completely helpless, but at most, it was enough to protect himself. If he wanted to explore the secrets behind the underground world, he would need to obtain more and more power. Leaving the old house that was filled with the smell of blood, the group quickly drove the truck parked at the entrance to the bar at the back of the restaurant. As soon as they walked in, Kars, who was waiting in the corner, quickly walked up to them and frowned. What happened? Why did you bring back a heavily injured werewolf and an ordinary girl? Where's Sakas? Did you catch him? After hearing the series of questions, Zhang Cheng shrugged helplessly and explained, the exact process is a little complicated, but to put it simply, we found a hiding place of Sakas and launched an attack. In the end, we discovered that this fellow was secretly holding a ritual and offering sacrifices to a demon called Bustling in order to obtain a half-werewolf infant mixed with the bloodline of hell. What? Demon? You encountered a demon. Kars was obviously shocked. He quickly turned his gaze to the Magic Hunter team. As the team leader, Ralph took a deep breath and nodded vigorously. That's right. We encountered a demon. If not for the presence of Mr. Adept, the three of us might not even be able to return alive to report this. Forgive me for being blunt, but this mission is far beyond the scope of our abilities. You should find someone better qualified. Wait, I need to report this to the lady immediately. Bring the captive and follow me. As for this ordinary girl, who is willing to keep her secret, Kars glanced at the young girl who was still in a daze as he spoke. I'll do it. Don't worry. If she can't keep the secret, I will personally kill her. Zhang Cheng stepped forward. He only now recognized that this survivor was the young girl who had blocked him at the entrance of the apartment not long ago. Chapter 69. A few minutes later, which Catherine was lying on the sofa in the deepest secret room of the restaurant. She listened to Ralph's description with an expressionless face, occasionally glancing at the werewolf kneeling on the ground and trembling. Even those who did not understand the situation could clearly feel that there was a flame of fury burning in her heart. In order to avoid being accidentally injured by the witch's fury, Kars quietly moved towards the door, trying his best to distance himself from the captive so that he would not be implicated. He had personally witnessed the terrifying state of the witch when she was furious. His life would be in danger if he was just a little bit closer. In this extremely stifling atmosphere, Ralph recounted everything that had happened in the basement of the old house, not leaving out a single detail. The moment the last word was spoken, a violent wolf forcefully dragged the kneeling werewolf to his feet. Even though he struggled desperately to breathe in fresh air, he was no different from a newborn baby in the face of the witch's terrifying strength. He had no power to resist at all. Tell me, what is your leader trying to do? Who is the mastermind behind this? The sooner you tell me, the easier it will be for you to die. Otherwise, I will let you taste pain that is 10 times worse than death. Catherine's eyes glowed with a faint purple light. It was obvious that her fury had reached its peak, and she did not even give the captive any hope of survival. I don't know. The werewolf stuttered out a few words from his throat. The suffocation and poor blood flow caused his brain to lack oxygen. He could not think at all, and could only answer subconsciously. However, Catherine was not satisfied with this answer. She raised her right arm and made a spinning motion. In an instant, one of the captive's arms was twisted 180 degrees, like a fried dough twist, and the crisp sound of bones cracking could be heard. Ah! As expected, the werewolf let out a heart-wrenching howl. The intense pain caused him to choose to transform. He opened his mouth full of sharp teeth and frantically tore at the intent that was choking his neck. Unfortunately, intent did not have a fixed form and could not be touched by teeth or claws. In less than 3 to 5 minutes, his ferocious eyes began to turn white and saliva flowed out of his mouth. Finally, he stopped struggling and entered a state of shock. Oomph! Trash! The witch swung her arm and slammed the unlucky man against the sturdy wall. The huge impact caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Looking at the half-dead captive on the ground, Catherine emitted a dangerous aura. After a while, she said, Kars, tell me, what do you think this damned werewolf leader is up to? Is he planning to occupy a territory in New York with a dozen infernal demons? No, madam. The council will definitely not allow such a situation. Personally, I'm more inclined to think that someone knew that Senator Miles was nearing the end of his life and secretly planned a conspiracy to create some chaos before the war game started, so that the lords of Brooklyn would be more suspicious. It would be ideal if a few of them couldn't help but make a move, Carsey analyzed with a serious expression. I suggest you inform the council and inform your allies to get ready. Maybe the war has already begun. When he said this, Carsey's eyes flashed with undisguised excitement and anticipation. It was as if he was looking forward to the scene of blood flowing like a river. Very good. If the war has already begun, then let's use the enemy to get rid of the little bitch Cassandra first. She has been secretly opposing me. Inform the werewolves who have sworn allegiance to me to launch an attack on Cassandra's territory starting tomorrow. Let's see who can seize the initiative in this chaos. Catherine licked her seductive red lips and gave the order. Kars immediately bowed deeply without saying a word. As you wish, my supreme mistress. Oh, by the way, Zhang also told me that the demon he encountered called himself Borowin. You can find someone to check the application records. Although I don't think this is the demon's real name, We might be able to get some unexpected clues. Catherine nodded gently. Okay, got it. Seems like my little Magus is still very useful, isn't he? Don't be too stingy and give him more rewards. At this time, I need his strength. Hee. Even if you didn't say so, I would have done so. You should know that it is far too difficult to recruit an adept that is both capable and not too greedy these days. Carsey turned around and waved at Ralph as he spoke. The latter hurriedly bowed respectfully to the witch and followed him into the dim tunnel. After a few minutes, the two of them returned to the entrance of the bar. Just as Ralph was about to walk in and greet Zhang Cheng, who was sitting at the bar and drinking juice while chatting with a young girl beside him, Carsey pulled him back and threatened him in a low voice. Remember, don't say a word about what you heard in the mistress room, especially to Zhang. Otherwise, you know what will happen. Of course, I am your man, and I will never betray you or the witch. Ralph bowed and promised solemnly. Very good. I like smart people. I hope you won't be too smart for your own good. Try to get as close to Zhang as possible and pay close attention to his every move. If you find anything suspicious, don't forget to tell me. Here, help me pass this to him. Tell him that this is an extra reward from the mistress for his mission. After saying this, Cars passed over a bracelet with a green gem embedded in it. Ralph held it in his hand and immediately felt the faint energy emitted from the gem. He couldn't help but exclaim, Magic! Magic item! Yes, the mistress thinks highly of him and even wants to rope him in. However, the prerequisite is that he is not a spy sent by someone else. All right, I still have other things to do. I'll leave the rest to you. Seeing Cars's aged figure disappear into the darkness, Ralph smiled bitterly and sighed. Gold dinar. Magic item. Is this the treatment that a powerful magus can get? Compared to me, it is like heaven and earth. If only I could get such power. Chapter 70. There was no doubt that Zhang Cheng, who was sitting near the bar, did not know that he had been quietly involved in a conspiracy and a struggle for power. He was busy looking at the new mission given by the parchment scroll. At the same time, he gave a brief introduction to the underworld to the young girl who had just regained consciousness. He emphasized how powerful the council was and how to deal with informants. Under the half-threatening and half-intimidating tone, the girl who was not even 18 years old was completely terrified. Coupled with her personal experience more than an hour ago, she could not help but tremble. At the same time, she muttered to herself in a very low voice, werewolves, vampires, ghosts, angels, demons, and countless monsters and myths and legends are all real. And they are hidden right beside us? Too scary, too scary. Then, Gracie, do you have any other questions? Zhang Cheng raised his glass and took a sip of the freshly squeezed orange juice before asking without raising his head. The girl named Gracie quickly shook her head and said, No, there isn't. But I want to know, why did you save me? What happened to the other 3 girls who were kidnapped like me? There are 2 main reasons for saving you. First, you have shown an extraordinary will to survive. Second, I think you're likely to make a good bait. After all, you almost became a sacrifice and will inevitably be marked by the devil. If he comes to this world, then the first thing he will look for will be you. As for the other 3 girls, unfortunately, they were swallowed by the flames in the violent explosion, leaving only charred corpses. After the explanation, Zhang Cheng no longer paid attention to her and focused on the few lines of small words on the parchment scroll. Different from the clear goal given before, the mission this time was very vague. The core meaning was only one word: integrate. Integrate where? The underworld or the power that the witch Catherine belonged to? To what extent did he integrate? Was it just a taste? Or did he need to obtain a certain amount of power and status? There was no detailed standard at all. The mission reward was also very strange. It was actually opening a passage to a new world. It must be known that the things brought back from Azeroth were enough to digest for a long time. Before he finished digesting, he did not intend to absorb any new knowledge. Anyone with half a brain would understand the principle of biting off more than one could chew. Of course, in addition to the main quest, the parchment also gave a few side quests. For example, Killing the werewolf leader Sakas would increase the maximum energy capacity of his body after he succeeded, and he would be rewarded with 2 talent points. Another example was deciphering the notes he obtained from Ralph. He would receive a corresponding reward for every stage he completed. It could be said that this parchment seemed to be consciously guiding Zhang Cheng, allowing him to learn knowledge step by step, improve his strength, and defeat his opponents. Just like in countless RPG games, doing quests, leveling up, and fighting bosses, as long as he didn't court death, there would never be an enemy that he couldn't defeat. Just as Zhang Cheng was thinking hard about the purpose of the bastard who threw him here without consent, Gracie finally recovered from her shock and could not help but shout, "I was marked by a demon." "That's right. Take a look at your shoulder. If I'm not mistaken, there should be a rather obvious mark. I've seen a few guys with such a mark on their bodies, but they were all killed by the demons in the end." Following the pessimistic answer, Ralph sat down on the chair beside Kieran, his eyes showing undisguised sympathy. No, no, no. Tracy tore apart her t-shirt like a madwoman, and indeed found a red claw-shaped mark on the back of her right shoulder. On the surface, the mark looked like it was caused by something hard pressing against her skin, causing her blood flow to be obstructed. However, no matter how hard she rubbed it, it would not disappear. In the end, she even scratched her skin, but the mark was still clearly visible. "Sigh, don't struggle, child. It's useless even if you tear off your entire skin. The mark will at most move from one place to another. If I were you, I would start to enjoy life from now on and try my best to live a happier life." Ralph sighed helplessly as he tried to persuade her. As a magic hunter, he had seen far too many deaths, as well as countless tragedies in the human world. He had even personally killed ordinary people who had been caught in the crossfire. Thus, he didn't have much of a reaction to this. He only felt a little pity. "No, I don't want to die. Save me. There must be a way to save me, right?" Tracy was so emotional that her speech was a little incoherent. Once she thought about how her soul would be imprisoned in hell and suffer endless torment after death, she felt chills all over her body. "Hee, little girl, I have a way for you to escape from the devil's pursuit. How about it? Do you want to try?" A male vampire with a pale face suddenly appeared beside the bar counter. "Damn you, Jesse. Get lost. Don't think that I don't know what you're planning." Ralph rolled his eyes in annoyance. The vampire, called Jesse, shrugged nonchalantly. "Don't be so prejudiced. Being my subordinate is much better than being killed by the devil, isn't it?" "Oomph. Don't think that I don't know. Low-level vampires who have just been converted are basically no different from slaves. Not only do they have to satisfy the various morbid desires of their superior vampires, they also have to go out to find food. More than 90% of them have already gone mad before they are promoted." Ralph laughed coldly, mercilessly exposing the other party's sinister intentions. All right. I'm just providing a choice. Remember, girl, if you've thought it through, you can find me at the Midnight Revelry Club in Queens anytime. My door will always be open for a cute girl like you." After saying this, Jesse stood up and greeted Zhang Cheng, who was still sitting at the same spot. He then turned around and left the underground bar with the other 2 female vampires who were scantily clad. Just as they left, Ralph took out a wooden box from his pocket and a bracelet with a green gemstone. "Mr. Magus, this is your reward for this mission. Lord Kars asked me to pass it to you." "Oh." Hearing the word reward, Zhang Cheng immediately kept the parchment and opened the wooden box to take a look. He found that there were a total of 40 gold dinars inside, which was 10 more than what he had originally ordered. Closing the box, he picked up the bracelet and examined it carefully. He quickly confirmed that there was an interesting spiritual life sealed within the gemstone. Chapter 71. Zhang Cheng gently stroked the exquisite carvings on the inside of the bracelet and suddenly asked, "What is this? Is it an extra reward?" "Huh, don't ask me. I'm just a small fry in charge of delivering the items. But rather than a reward, I personally think it's more like a compensation. After all, demons are notoriously difficult to deal with. If it weren't for your presence, Her Excellency wouldn't even know who her enemy was." Ralph picked up the glass of whiskey he had just ordered and downed it in a single gulp. He then grinned and complimented. Really? Zhangqing obviously didn't believe Ralph's excuse. Although he didn't know why Catherine was so generous, one thing was for sure. The purpose was definitely not just compensation. Ralph smiled bitterly and shook his head. Don't make it difficult for me. It's a waste not to take the benefits that are already in my hands. Besides, thanks to you, our team has also received a reward of $2 million. We won't have to work for a long time. All right, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first. Seeing that he couldn't get any useful information out of Ralph, Zhangqing immediately stood up and looked like he was about to leave. After all, he had been searching for information and fighting until 2 o'clock in the morning. He was mentally exhausted and was eager to go back to his place and have a good sleep. However, before he could enter the passage, Gracie quickly caught up to him. She stammered in an embarrassed tone, Mr. Adept, I don't have a place to stay now. I wonder if I can stay at your place for a few nights. Don't have a place to stay? Zhangqing stopped and turned his head to look at the girl behind him. She was wearing an ordinary cheap white t-shirt, a pair of denim shorts that were about to fade, a pair of white socks and sneakers. Her blonde hair was messy and draped over her shoulders. Due to the long-term lack of maintenance, the ends of her hair were obviously yellow and forked. Coupled with her haggard face and dark circles under her eyes, she looked like a child from a rich family. Yes, since my sister was killed, I gave up my job and my apartment. I used all my savings to buy a gun to avenge her. Now, I don't even have a penny on me. It's impossible to find a place to stay. Gracie said helplessly as she took out her empty pockets. What about your parents? Zhangqing frowned subconsciously. The girl laughed self-deprecatingly and replied, Sorry, my sister and I have never seen our parents. It was my uncle who raised us. But when we were 16, he died of lung cancer. His wife, who had disappeared for 10 years, suddenly appeared and took away his only inheritance, the house. We were chased out on the streets and could only rely on odd jobs to support ourselves. Don't worry, I'll soon find a job and I'll move out. I won't disturb you for long. Zhangqing stood there and hesitated for a few seconds. In the end, he reluctantly nodded. You can stay at my place for a while, but there are a few things you have to pay attention to. Secondly, without my permission, you're not allowed to touch any of the furnishings in the house. Thirdly, keep quiet. No matter what you see, don't make a fuss. No problem. I swear I won't give you any trouble, Gracie promised without hesitation. After all, to someone as poor as her, it was good enough to have a place to stay. She did not have the right to ask for more. In addition, she had a hidden motive. She wanted to stay with this mysterious wizard as much as possible so that the demon could not kill her easily. Zhangqing was not a fool. He easily saw through the girl's intentions, but he did not say anything. He went straight to the parking lot behind the restaurant. When the two of them arrived in front of the unique sports car, Gracie's eyes lit up. She stared at the streamlined body of the car and muttered to herself, Oh my God! Serene S7. 7-liter V8 engine, 750 horsepower, luxurious interior, priced at $550,000. I can't believe I'm lucky enough to see it with my own eyes. Oh, is this car very rare? Zhangqing looked puzzled. He had no interest in cars, so he did not know what was so surprising about a mere means of transportation. Of course it's rare. In the eyes of a car fan, it's like the Mona Lisa's smile to an artist or Venus with a broken arm to a sculptor. Do you know it only takes 8 seconds to accelerate to 100 kilometers per hour? Its maximum speed can reach 325 kilometers per hour. It's recognized as the fastest sports car in the world. Didn't you know about this when you bought the car? Gracie listed out the detailed parameters of the sports car as if she was very familiar with them. He didn't need to ask to know that she was a car fan. Zhangqing shrugged nonchalantly and said, No, from what I see, it's not much different from the other 2 cars in the garage, other than its appearance. All right, stop talking nonsense and get in the car. Okay. Gracie realized that the man in front of her did not seem to care about the 2 famous sports cars. She immediately shut her mouth wisely and took the initiative to sit in the front passenger seat. Accompanied by the sound of the engine running at high speed, The car quickly left the parking lot and sped along the road. It only took them 10 minutes to enter the villa. The exhausted Zhang Cheng pushed open the door and pointed to the room on the right side of the second floor. He said, "These 3 rooms are guest rooms. Each room has a toilet and bathroom. You can choose any of them to be your bedroom. Also, there's fruit juice, milk, bread, ham, sausages, and other fast food in the fridge downstairs. There's also a 24-hour phone on the table. If you're hungry, you can order them yourself." After that, he did not care if she remembered it or not. He pushed open the first room on the left on the first floor and slammed the door shut. "Hey, wait, I don't have any clothes to change into. Can I borrow yours to wear first?" Gracie asked loudly through the door. "Up to you," Zhang Cheng replied through the door. Anyway, the clothes were not his. They belonged to the original owner of the house. He only needed to keep a few clothes to change into. After getting a positive answer, the girl breathed a sigh of relief. She ran to one of the guest rooms and quickly took off her clothes without saying anything. She went into the bathroom to wash the dirt off her body. She began to sob softly as she washed. She had been wandering on the streets for more than a week. She was already exhausted physically and mentally. Now that she thought of her sister who had died tragically, sadness instantly filled her heart. Chapter 72. Like many people who often stayed up late, when Zhang Cheng woke up from his bed, it was already close to noon. The bright sun had already shone through the window and filled the entire room. He first glanced at his watch out of habit, then got up to put on his clothes, wash his face, and brush his teeth. When he pushed open the door and walked out of the bedroom, he was surprised to find that there were sizzling sounds coming from the kitchen. One had to know that since the original owner died in an accident, this villa had been idle for half a year. Many places were covered with thick layers of dust, especially the kitchen, which was the worst disaster area. It was basically the kind of place where people could not enter. This was also the reason why he had not cooked a meal since he moved in. But now, there was actually someone cooking in the kitchen. Driven by curiosity, he quickly walked to the door and saw the brand new kitchen at a glance, as well as the plates and cutlery that were scrubbed until they shone. Of course, more importantly, Gracie was waving a spatula, skillfully removing the eggs and bacon from the pan. She placed them together with the slices of bread, tomatoes, and lettuce, and finally smeared a small amount of butter sauce on them. A good-looking sandwich was ready. Carefully putting the breakfast on the plate, the girl immediately turned around and greeted with a smile. "Good afternoon. Do you want to eat something?" "Okay, thank you. But that bottle of butter sauce hasn't expired yet?" Zhang Cheng picked up one of the sandwiches and took a bite, asking a little uncertainly. "Don't worry. According to the production date on the lid, it can still be kept for at least 8 months. And according to my experience, for things like butter sauce, it doesn't matter even if it's expired for 1 or 2 months. At least it won't give people diarrhea." Gracie shrugged indifferently and explained. As a girl who was born and grew up in the slums, she often bought discounted food from the supermarket that was about to expire. She was very clear about what could be kept for a while and what must be bought and eaten immediately. "Okay, I hope you're right." Zhang Qing nodded lightly and swallowed the sandwich in 2 or 3 bites. After all, he had even eaten the disgusting magic bread. What else could he not swallow? After eating 2 sandwiches in one breath, he returned to the dining table. While drinking orange juice, he asked with interest, "Tell me, what are your plans for the future?" "Plans? Ha!" A bitter look appeared on Gracie's face. "I'm just an ordinary girl who didn't even finish high school. What kind of plans can I have? I only hope to find a stable job and settle down. Everything else will happen naturally." "Oh, you're not worried about the demons anymore?" Zhang Cheng raised his eyebrows in surprise. Sometimes he really couldn't understand the circuitry of the Americans' brains. Not long ago, they were so desperate to live, but a few hours later, they could laugh happily. Even if they were homeless, Gracie subconsciously touched her shoulder and sighed helplessly. "Sigh, it would be a lie to say that I'm not worried at all. But what's the use of worrying? I can't even deal with a werewolf, let alone a terrifying demon. Just like that uncle suggested, instead of worrying about when you'll die, you might as well enjoy life. Since that's the case, I won't disturb you any further. Here, this is your credit card. I think you need to buy some cosmetics, a change of clothes, shoes, and socks before you start your job interview. After saying that, Zhang Qing took out a credit card with an ordinary limit from his pocket and threw it on the table. At the same time, he glanced at the other party meaningfully. As the original t-shirt and denim shorts were tattered beyond recognition, Gracie was now wearing a large men's white shirt. Through the shirt, one could even vaguely see the seductive curves of her body. As an adult male with rich experience, he could guarantee that the bottom part of the shirt was mostly bare. Thank you. The girl undoubtedly realized this as her face was slightly hot. There was no other way. There were no women's clothes in the entire house. She couldn't always walk around in a bathrobe. A relatively neutral shirt naturally became her first choice. Just as the atmosphere began to become more and more strange, a knock on the door suddenly broke the silence. Bang, bang, bang. Without much time to think, Zhang Cheng subconsciously got up and opened the door. He saw a slightly plump middle-aged man standing at the door. He was none other than the lawyer who walked on the border between the underground world and the ordinary world, the Pullman. Good afternoon, Your Excellency. I'm here to inform you that all the follow-up problems have been solved. You can now return to your home in the Upper East Side at any time and reunite with your mother. The lawyer smiled and expressed his intention. However, Zhang Qing didn't believe the other party's excuse at all. He sneered and teased. Inform me? You can't wait to get paid, right? Hee. Since you've seen through it, then I won't beat around the bush. Anyway, 4 gold dinars is just a drop of water in the vast ocean for you, a grain of sand in the endless wall. Seeing that his little trick was exposed, the Pullman simply admitted it openly. Come in, I also have something to ask you for help. Zhang Cheng made a gesture of invitation and turned to walk in the direction of the basement. It's my pleasure to serve you. The lawyer bowed slightly and hurriedly followed behind, closing the door behind him. When he walked into the living room and noticed Gracie in a white shirt, his eyes instantly revealed a light that all men understood. He lowered his voice and teased. Your Excellency Wizard, your methods are really amazing. You only used one night to get such a young and beautiful blonde chick. How do you know I got her? Zhang Cheng asked without turning his head. The Pullman didn't even think and directly replied, Isn't it simple? She's wearing your shirt. Women only wear men's shirts under one circumstance, and that's after they've had sex. Ha! Hearing this, Zhang Qing couldn't help but laugh while shaking his head. Sorry to disappoint you. The reason she wore the shirt wasn't because we had sex, but because she didn't have any other clothes to wear. Also, whether you believe it or not, I won't touch her, because she's a bait. Have you ever seen a fisherman eat the bait himself? Bait. The Pullman's face showed a trace of confusion. Yes, bait. To the demons, letting a sacrifice escape was a humiliation that could not be washed away. They would do everything they could to capture or kill the sacrifice that escaped. And I only need to keep an eye on this girl. Then I can set a trap and wait for the demon to come in obediently. When he said this, Zhang Cheng's eyes flashed with a light that was unknown whether it was excitement or anticipation. Chapter 73. In this world, there is no such thing as love for no reason, and, similarly, there is no such thing as free lunch. From the very beginning, Zhang Cheng had made up his mind to make use of Gracie. That was why he provided her with free accommodation, food, and even money. Otherwise, with his character, he would not allow any stranger to get close to him. He would also not be like some idiots who would be lustful when they saw a beautiful woman. His way of thinking was very simple. If it was beneficial to him, he would do it. If it was disadvantageous to him, he would try his best to avoid it. As for whether it would cause harm to others, he did not care at all. As a middle-aged man who had experienced the ways of the world, the Pullman felt a chilling madness and indifference from the words. He subconsciously shivered and hurriedly lowered his head to avoid eye contact, following behind without saying a word. The two of them, one in front and one behind, quickly arrived at the outermost room of the basement. Zhang Cheng casually picked up a bottle of beginner healing potion from the shelf and handed it to the lawyer. The latter gently shook it in his hand and immediately asked in an uncertain tone, This is a magic potion? You can say so. No matter how serious the external injury is, as long as you drink this bottle, it will immediately stop the bleeding and also speed up the healing of the wound. This bottle is for you. You could try it yourself. Zhang Cheng very casually introduced the potion. Oh, really? The Pullman was obviously surprised. However, his hesitation did not last long. In just a few seconds, he picked up a small knife used to cut herbs and forcefully cut his left arm. In an instant, scarlet blood gushed out from a wound so deep that the bone could be seen. The intense pain made the lawyer's face look a little twisted. Following that, he pulled out the cork and raised his head to drink the potion. In the blink of an eye, abundant vitality flowed through the digestive system to the whole body. The originally bleeding wound quickly stopped bleeding and scabbed over, leaving only a red mark. It was obvious that the wound just now did not exceed the limit of what the beginner healing potion could heal. Otherwise, although the bleeding would have stopped, the wound would not have healed so quickly. The Pullman stared at his arm that was still stained with a lot of blood and immediately exclaimed, "Unbelievable! This is unbelievable! Did you make this potion? You know alchemy?" Zhang Cheng smiled and nodded. "That's right, I made it. What do you think? What price do you think would be appropriate if we were to sell it to the public? For sale. Oh my God, don't you know? Potions had always been the most sought-after item in the underworld. There was no other. Councilman Miles, who now controlled the entire Brooklyn, relied on his outstanding alchemy skills to win over most of the lords and finally succeeded. My suggestion is that you can use alchemy to obtain a territory for yourself instead of using it to make money." The Pullman waved his arms excitedly. "Territory? What's the use?" Zhang Cheng asked with a puzzled look. Although he roughly knew that feudal lords could enjoy some privileges in their own territories, he wasn't very clear about the specifics. Of course it works. As a feudal lord, he could collect 11% of the taxes in his territory. In other words, all transactions in the underground world had to be paid to the feudal lord. Secondly, the feudal lord had the right to participate in the annual auction. At that time, there would be countless rare treasures and even rare slaves appearing in the auction house. Lastly, and most importantly, only by becoming a feudal lord would you have the qualifications to participate in the war game and fight for the position of councilman. Don't you desire great power? While saying this, the Pullman had been carefully observing Zhang Cheng's reaction. In his eyes, this was an opportunity to get rid of his awkward position and climb up. If he missed this opportunity, he was afraid that there wouldn't be a second time in his life. As a small fry who could be ordered around by the feudal lords, it was his dream to obtain authority and status in the underground world. Zhang Cheng rubbed his chin and thought for a moment. He immediately smiled and shook his head. It sounds interesting. But the problem is that there are already 22 feudal lords in Brooklyn. I'm afraid there aren't any extra territories left for me. Moreover, I don't have the time and energy to deal with these messy things. No, my dear sir, I'm afraid you still don't know. Councilman Miles's life will soon come to an end. The feudal lords in Brooklyn will soon go to war. Some of them will die, some will be exiled, and a few will become councilmen. At that time, a lot of territories will be empty. As for the management, you don't have to worry at all. Just find a good helper. After saying this, the Pullman suddenly raised his head. His eyes revealed undisguised desire and ambition. "Do you know what you are doing?" Zhang Cheng raised the corner of his mouth and showed a playful expression. Through the short conversation just now, he suddenly realized that there were very few people in this world who had the ability to make magic potions. Therefore, he might be able to use his alchemy skills to achieve some special goals. In addition, there was also a very important piece of information. That was, the power of the underworld in Brooklyn was about to be reshuffled. The recent abnormalities were most likely related to the struggle between the feudal lords. Ballman swore solemnly, "Yes, I know what I'm doing. Sir, please give me a chance. I will use practical actions to prove myself." "Okay, then let's give it a try. After all, there's not much loss if we fail. But let's put it bluntly first. What you do is your own actions and has nothing to do with me. If you are in danger, I won't go back to save you. Tell me, how are you going to operate? As Zhang asked, he threw the freshly collected earthroot grass and silverleaf grass into a beaker and gently stirred it in front of the Pullman. When the solution inside turned yellowish-green, he quickly lit an alcohol lamp and began to heat it. After about 10 seconds, the solution began to emit a faint pungent smell. After 3 or 4 minutes, the solution gradually became viscous. At the moment when it was about to solidify, he accurately injected arcane energy into it. In an instant, the yellowish-green jelly evaporated into a gaseous state. Without saying anything, Zhang picked up the funnel placed on the alchemy table and covered the beaker. Through the small opening at the top, he poured the yellowish-green gas into the test tube and sealed it. After the gas in the test tube cooled down, it condensed into a clear and transparent potion. This potion was Azeroth's famous Lion King's strength potion. In the game, it only provided a pitiful 4 points of strength. According to Zhang's tests, a normal human farmer in Azeroth only had around 10 points of strength. Earthlings who lacked training were even worse, only around 8 to 9 points. Chapter 74. This is another new type of magic potion? The Pullman asked uncertainly. He stared at the Lion King's potion in the bottle, his eyes revealing a trace of undisguised greed. Carefully placing the sealed potion bottle and some other magic potions on the shelf, Zhang turned around and nodded. That's right. Each of the different color potions you see has a different effect. For example, the red potion that you just tried has the effect of healing. Another example is this yellow-green potion. It can give the drinker extra muscle strength. Apart from that, the black potion can make the skin and muscles tougher. The dark green potion can give the drinker an endless amount of regeneration. The emerald green potion can increase a person's agility. Before he finished introducing all the potions, the Pullman couldn't help but interrupt. Wait a minute. If you don't mind me asking, how many types of magic potions can you make? Currently, about 20 types. Zhang pondered for a moment and quickly gave an answer. Due to the large amount of low-level potions that he had recently made, his alchemy skill was now almost at the intermediate level. According to the specific numbers in the game, it should be around 150 points of proficiency. However, due to the slow growth of some high-grade herbs, he could only make the lowest level potions for now. What? The Pullman lost his composure and let out a high-pitched voice. He then quickly muttered to himself, Unbelievable. 20 types. You can actually make 20 different types of magic potions? You must know that Representative Miles can only make 6 types. Oh, tell me, what are the effects of the potions that this representative has made? Zhang asked with great interest. The research topic that he was most interested in now was to compare the use of supernatural powers in Azeroth and this world, then find out the similarities and differences. Finally, he could use the strong points to make up for the weak points and turn them into his own. However, his research was still in the early stages. He didn't even understand what the strange energy in the air was and how to use it. As far as I know, Representative Miles can make 6 types of magic potions: dream, death, illusion, change, petrification, and energy amplification. The first type allows the user to enter a dream while still conscious. It is usually used to search for important forgotten memories or to stimulate one's subconscious abilities. The second type is extremely special. It can stop a living person's breathing and heartbeat for a short period of time, allowing them to walk in the world as a living dead. During this time, no matter how much damage the body suffers, it will not die, as long as the damaged parts are repaired or replaced before the effects of the potion ends. The third type, change, allows the user to see the boundaries between worlds and even some connecting passages. As we all know, ever since the war with Hell and Heaven ended, the worlds of the 3 sides have been torn apart to varying degrees. And these torn parts have slowly evolved into small spaces. Some of them have been discovered by us, while others are still hidden in the endless darkness. Only with the help of the illusion magic potion could the Council find those hidden spaces. The fourth type, change, as the name suggests, allows the user to enlarge their body in a short period of time, gaining strength and destructive power far beyond their normal state. The fifth type, petrification, is similar, but the enlargement will turn the whole body into stone, thus gaining unparalleled resistance. But the last type, energy amplification, is different. It can greatly increase the power of all forms of energy. In the underground world, almost no lord can resist its temptation. Of course, these are all rumors. After all, I'm just an insignificant person who doesn't have the qualifications to come into contact with magic potions, so I can't figure out how much of it is exaggerated. The Pullman said as he moved closer to the alchemy table. He stretched out his stubby fingers and gently stroked the test tubes filled with various liquids as if he was treating a lover. To him, these potions not only meant wealth and power, but also the beginning of a change in fate. Zhang Cheng touched his chin and fell into a short period of contemplation. After a while, he looked up at the lawyer and asked in a solemn tone, "Can you arrange a meeting for me?" "Meeting? With who?" The Pullman was obviously stunned for a moment, then quickly reacted and exclaimed with his mouth wide open, "Oh no. You don't want to meet with Councilman Miles, do you?" "Why not?" Zhang Cheng asked with a faint smile. "As you can see, he knows alchemy, so do I. Maybe we can exchange our experience and knowledge." No. The Pullman shook his head and explained, "This is a sensitive period. Anyone who comes into contact with Councilman Miles will inevitably be targeted by the lords of the entire Brooklyn area. I don't want to die, and I don't want to poke this hornet's nest. If you want to get those secret recipes, you can wait for him to die and directly get them from the new councilman. After all, other than you, there won't be a second person in New York who knows alchemy." "I see." Zhang Cheng's face showed an expression of sudden realization. He pulled open the drawer, grabbed a few gold dinars, and threw them to the lawyer behind him. "Your payment. Now our debt is settled." The Pullman caught them in ecstasy and stuck out his disgusting tongue to lick the surface of the gold coin, like a complete fetish. But if one observed carefully, they would find that as the number of times they touched the gold coin increased, the mysterious energy stored in the gold coin began to gradually disappear and finally became an ordinary gold coin. After doing all this, he reluctantly stuffed the rest of the gold coin into his pocket, took out a tissue to wipe his saliva, and said apologetically, "I'm so sorry, I haven't absorbed energy for a whole 3 months, so I really can't control myself." Zhang Cheng shrugged nonchalantly. "It's okay, but I'm a little curious. Is this part of your ability?" "Yes. My ability is to modify the memories of ordinary people. Every time I modify it, it will consume a corresponding amount of energy, and I have no way to obtain energy myself, so I can only rely on absorbing gold dinars to recover. So to me, gold dinars are not only wealth, but also a source of power. If I can't absorb energy for a long time, my body will quickly age and die." The Pullman had no intention of hiding anything, and even took the initiative to expose his weakness. Chapter 75. A few hours later, in the witch's bedroom under the restaurant, Catherine was carefully inspecting bottles of different colored magic potions. It took her a full 40 minutes to put down the tools in her hands. She pursed her lips and praised with a tone full of surprise, "Excellent. Although I can't distinguish the ingredients used, there is no doubt that each bottle has a good effect. I didn't expect my cute little Magus to be proficient in alchemy." "No, madam, I think it's too early to say. Zhang being able to produce a magic potion doesn't mean that he can concoct it. It's very likely that he obtained the finished product from someone else." Kars, who had been waiting for a long time, gave a different opinion. As an assistant and servant, his duty was to stand from another angle and help his mistress analyze the various possibilities, not blindly agreeing. Gently fiddling with the potion bottles, Catherine asked without raising her head, "Pullman, do you have anything to say?" "Of course. My honorable Sir Lord, I swear on my life that I saw the entire process of Zhang concocting one of the potions with my own eyes. He is definitely a magus who has mastered alchemy." The lawyer quickly stepped forward and made a solemn vow. Perhaps Zhang Cheng would never have thought that the lawyer, who had just been discussing with him how to use alchemy to seize a territory, would turn around and sell him out. "Oh, you saw it with your own eyes." Catherine's eyes shone slightly. The Pullman hurriedly nodded. Yes. He only used less than 10 minutes to concoct a few bottles of the magic potion that can increase muscle strength. In addition, he also said that he has mastered at least 20 different potion formulas with different effects. He also hopes to meet with Counselor Miles to discuss his experience and techniques. Catherine seemed to have thought of something, and a trace of playfulness quickly appeared on her face. Then tell me, Pullman, according to your observation, does he have ambition? Does he desire to obtain power? I'm sorry, madam. I can only tell you that he is not very enthusiastic about power, but he has an extraordinary thirst for knowledge and power, coupled with an incomparably cold and crazy heart. It is difficult to give a specific evaluation. If you intend to treat him like a servant or subordinate, you definitely can't. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and warned with a serious expression. What you mean is that Zhang Wufa has been roped in or subdued, right? Carsi frowned and interrupted. That's right. To be more precise, he couldn't be roped in for the long term. Because if you can't satisfy Zhang's thirst for knowledge and power, he will quickly lose interest in you. The Pullman commented without thinking. It had to be said that although the two of them had only interacted for a short period of time, he had seen through Zhang Cheng's character at a glance. The witch returned to the sofa, raised her legs wrapped in black stockings, and chuckled. It sounds interesting. Kars, what do you think? The latter stroked the beard on his chin and pondered for a few seconds. Finally, he suggested meaningfully, since Zhang desires knowledge and power, we might as well give him knowledge and power first. After all, as a magus who has mastered alchemy, he will be noticed by the Supreme Council sooner or later. What we need to do before that happens is to use him to clear the obstacles on the road to power. Furthermore, from the fact that he so easily gave away a large amount of magic potions to a stranger whom he has only known for a few days, I'm starting to believe that he indeed came from a place isolated from the rest of the world. Well said. According to the observation of the eye, apart from hiding in the villa to study, research, and experiment, he completely ignores the outside world. A person with such a character is not suitable to be a spy. Moreover, among my enemies, none of them would be able to order a magus who has mastered alchemy to be a spy. It seems that this time, Lady Luck is on my side, isn't it? After saying that, a faint purple light flashed in Catherine's eyes. Then what do you intend to do with these magic potions? I promised Zhang to get a piece of land for him. The Pullman cautiously reminded. Kars glanced at the lawyer in disdain. Idiot, where did your usual cleverness go? Bring all the magic potions here, and we will naturally help to deal with them. Once Lady Luck gets rid of her opponent and becomes a counselor, do you still have to worry about not having a piece of land? Catherine nodded approvingly. Yes, with these magic potions, I can definitely pull more people over to my side. As for the land, don't worry. I promise to give the cute little magus a piece of land with the richest resources. After all, he is still so young and has limitless possibilities. I won't be so foolish as to fall out with a magus who has the potential to become a powerhouse for some immediate benefits. Seeing that both of them had made their promises, the Pullman finally heaved a sigh of relief. He placed one hand on his chest and bowed deeply. Thank you for your generosity. One last thing. From now on, I will no longer provide you with any information about Zhang. Instead, I will actively fight for his benefits. It's all right, I understand. Also, congratulations to you for finally achieving your dream of many years and putting half a foot into the whirlpool of power. But please remember, as a qualified servant, the most important thing is not to flatter, but to fill in the gaps of the master. You have been in the world of ordinary people for too long, and it is inevitable that you will be infected with some bad habits, such as selfishness and deceit, or a lack of loyalty. I can tell you very clearly that job hopping is not popular in the underground world. Once your master starts to get tired of you, then your life will come to an end. While saying this, Kars's expression suddenly became extremely solemn and serious, without the slightest trace of his usual gloominess. Instead, it was as if a senior was teaching a junior how to do his job well. Please be at ease, I know what to do. The Pullman respectfully bowed, then turned and walked out of the room. To him, From the moment he walked out of the room, it was a brand new him, a brand new life. Gazing at the lawyer's slightly plump back, Carr suddenly took a deep breath and sighed. Fate is really something that can never be fathomed. Who would have thought that a cleaner who is responsible for cleaning up other people's messes would one day be able to shake off his lowly status and become a person above others? Oomph. Don't be sentimental, my loyal servant. Believe me, trash like the Pullman will not be able to walk far on the path of power. The underground world has always been a place where the strong are respected. Without power, what's the point of climbing higher? A simple ambush or assassination will cause him to lose everything. In this aspect, my dear little Magus is very clear. Catherine did not hide her contempt for the Pullman. Carr smiled and spread out his hands. All right, you are right. The Pullman's ability is not enough to protect himself. The higher he climbs, the harder he will fall. Right. How do you plan to deal with these magic potions? Chapter 76. If life was a great adventure, then for most ordinary people, the difficulty of this adventure could only be considered average at best. Although they might encounter all kinds of dangers and hardships along the way, most of them would always successfully reach the final destination. Of course, if one was born in a rich and powerful family, then the difficulty of the adventure might become very low. One could even obtain money, power, status, and an enviable luxurious life without much effort. However, if one was born in the slums where violent crimes were rampant, or in areas where wars were frequent, the difficulty would instantly rise from ordinary to purgatory. One might even be killed by bullets flying out of nowhere before reaching adulthood, ending this great adventure prematurely. For Zhang Cheng, the difficulty of his life should have been the same as most people. He should have had a relatively happy childhood, a job that didn't make much money but was enough to support him. Perhaps he should have waited a few years, found a girlfriend, and then got married and had children. He should have lived the rest of his life in an ordinary way. However, this ordinary life did not last long. A drunken complaint changed everything. Now, the difficulty of his life adventure was probably far beyond the scope of what ordinary people could understand. Moreover, it seemed to have stimulated the madness that was suppressed in his subconscious. Ever since he sent the Pullman away, he began to study the notebook full of mysterious symbols without rest. He also tried to combine different symbols to see if he could trigger the corresponding magic resonance. One must know that this was equivalent to using the most primitive method to open a password lock made up of 2,500 characters. It was almost an impossible task to completely crack it. Any rational person would decisively choose to give up. Fortunately, compared to the password lock that only had one correct input sequence, there were many correct combinations of the mysterious symbols. In just a short 3 to 4 days, Zhang Cheng relied on the book Arcane Rune Principles and Introduction that he borrowed from Dalaran Library to find a trace of a pattern, or rather, a common point among the countless symbols of different shapes and sizes. In order to prove that these patterns were not his own illusion, he quickly melted a gold dinar and branded a few of the runes on both sides of a table knife, according to the sequence. Then, with the help of the energy contained in the gold coin, he forcibly activated each rune. Instantly, a dazzling light burst out from the first rune, followed by the second, third, fourth. In less than a minute, all the runes were lit up, and a faint frost was emitting from the edge of the blade. Feeling the bone-piercing chill from his palm, Zhang Cheng smirked and muttered to himself in a voice that only he could hear, "Interesting. How interesting." The manifestation of energy in this world seemed to be more obscure and difficult to control, but at the same time, it was also more varied. If a mere 8 runes can produce such a strong frost effect, then the 2,500 runes on the notebook must be a complete system. Before he could finish his sentence, the table knife in his hand began to tremble violently for some reason. Cracks that were almost invisible to the naked eye began to spread in all directions with the rune as the center. "Damn it!" Zhang Cheng cursed in a low voice and hurriedly threw this dangerous-looking gadget far away. The silver-white table knife drew a beautiful parabola in the air and before it hit anything, it broke into countless pieces. In the next second, boom, along with the violent release of energy, all the fragments scattered in all directions like bullets. There was no time to think. The first thing he did when he returned to the capital was to hide behind a wall to avoid being stabbed. Less than half a second after he hid, a crackling sound came from outside the basement. After about 3 to 5 seconds, the sound gradually disappeared. He poked his head out to take a look and was surprised to find that the inside had turned into a world of ice and snow. The table, chairs, floor, walls, ceiling, bookshelves, and so on were all covered with 2 fingers of ice, and the table knife fragments were mixed in the ice. There is no doubt that it was the energy carried by these fragments that caused the shocking scene in front of him. However, the ice that relied on energy to form quickly disappeared as quickly as it came. In less than 10 minutes, it began to slowly vaporize and finally disappeared completely. Not even a drop of water was left. Zhang Cheng bent down and picked up a sharp shard. With a bitter smile, he sighed and said, "All right, it seems that the function of those runes isn't to add frost energy as I thought. Instead, it's a dangerous energy explosion. It doesn't matter. As the saying goes, everything is difficult at the beginning. Since I have made the initial breakthrough, I believe that the next step will be much easier." Just as he was about to summon the spiritual life in the bracelet to clean up the mess in front of him, the door to the first floor was suddenly knocked. Bang! 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 "Who is it?" Zhang Cheng subconsciously frowned and asked. "It's me, Gracie." "Sir, there's a beautiful lady outside who wants to see you." The girl's voice came through the wooden door. "Send her away. Didn't I say that I don't want to see anyone?" Zhang Cheng's tone revealed a strong sense of impatience. After all, the research was at a critical stage, and he did not want to waste time on some beautiful lady. Gracie helplessly sighed and explained, "I said that, but she insisted that if you don't come out to see her today, she won't leave." "Oh, right. She also said that she is your girlfriend." "What?" Zhang Cheng was taken aback. Only then did he recall his impersonation. It seemed that he did have a girlfriend. According to the Pullman's description, the other party seemed to be a rare beauty. "Sir, I suggest that you hurry up. That lady must have misunderstood the relationship between us, so the expression on her face is very scary." Gracie kindly reminded. "Okay, I understand." Zhang Cheng rubbed his somewhat swollen head. To be honest, he also had a headache when faced with such a situation. He did not know how to deal with it. After all, that was the girlfriend of another person with the same name as him, and not his. To be exact, the two of them had not even met before. But now this woman actually came to him with the attitude of a punitive expedition. It was as awkward as it could be. Zhang Cheng would rather face the sinister and cruel Forgotten One than open the door and walk out to face a jealous woman. But unfortunately, things had come to this point, and there was no way for him to escape. Moreover, he did not want to give up his legal identity and become an illegal resident. Chapter 77. With an uneasy feeling, Zhang Cheng slowly walked out of the basement. Every step he took was so slow that he looked like a prisoner walking to the execution ground. However, no matter how long the road was, it would eventually come to an end, not to mention that the basement was only a dozen meters away from the living room. The moment he passed through the kitchen and entered the living room, he finally saw a woman in a gray business suit sitting on the sofa. She was angrily staring at Gracie, who had an innocent look on her face a few steps away. She had short black hair, dark blue eyes, a high-nosed bridge, and slightly thick but very sexy lips. In terms of facial features alone, she definitely met the standards of a white beauty in the minds of most people. In addition, she had a height of nearly 1.75 meters, a slender neck, a proud upper body, a perky butt, and slender legs wrapped in flesh-colored stockings. The 8-centimeter high heels on her feet not only set off her almost perfect figure, but also did not make her look particularly frivolous. It was no wonder that the Pullman used the word stunner to describe her. It was believed that anyone who saw her for the first time would involuntarily feel a sense of amazement. Although she had not spoken so far, judging from her sitting posture and emotional control, she must have received a good education. Even if she was angry, she still had to maintain the most basic etiquette. Seeing that the main character had appeared, Gracie immediately gave him a look that said, "Good luck." She turned around and quickly walked back to the room upstairs. With a bang, only a man and a woman were left in the living room. The two looked at each other, and no one had the intention to speak. For a moment, they fell into an awkward silence. After about 6 or 7 minutes, the woman finally could not help but stand up and ask in a low voice, "Who is that girl? Why can she live here, but I can't? And when did you come back? Why didn't you call me? Am I not important in your heart at all?" Looking at the other party's two eyes that were mixed with grievance and anger, Zhang Chung suddenly felt a headache coming on. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to cut the Gordian knot and quickly deal with these annoying, trivial matters in one go. Therefore, he responded with a slightly apologetic tone, "I'm sorry, Maggie. I don't think the two of us are suitable to continue. Why don't we just break up?" "WH. What?" The woman called Maggie widened her eyes, as if she had heard something unbelievable. "What I mean is, if possible, it's best not to contact her in the future. It's easy to understand, isn't it?" Zhang Chung explained very calmly. From a moment he decided to embark on the path of pursuing power, he understood that family, love, and friendship, which were treasured by many people, were fatal poisons to him. As the saying goes, the more you care about something, the easier it is to hesitate. Often, you can't give up everything at the critical moment, which will ruin the precious opportunity that was originally at your fingertips. In Zhang Cheng's mind, a person who truly pursued power should be like the Orc Gul'dan. When necessary, they would not hesitate to sacrifice everything except their own life, even their own race. Of course, he did not appreciate the bold move of the first warlock in the history of Azeroth. He did not even complete the basic intelligence work before rashly entering the tomb of the Dark Titan. As a result, he was torn to pieces by countless demons. Maggie obviously did not know that the young man in front of her was no longer the person she loved deeply. Tears emerged in an instant and slowly slid down her cheeks. After a while, she said self-deprecatingly, "It's been half a year. You came back just to tell me this?" "I'm sorry." Zhang Chung stood there unmoved, his eyes revealing indifference without a trace of emotion. "Huh, I'm really a fool. I actually waited for you for half a year. Well, as you wish, we won't meet again in the future." After that, Maggie laughed and wiped away her tears. She turned and left the villa. She drove the car parked at the door and quickly disappeared at the end of the road. Not long after she left, Gracie opened the door and tiptoed out. She asked with a face full of gossip, "You dumped her?" "Yes. Is there a problem?" Zhang Chung rolled his eyes in annoyance. Gracie quickly shook her head. "No, no problem. I just feel a little sorry for you. After all, she's so beautiful, has such a good figure, is rich, educated, and most importantly, she loves you. It's not easy to find another girlfriend like her. By the way, she doesn't seem to know that you're a wizard. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Mind your own business. Remember, you're being targeted by the devil. If you don't want to die, you'd better be vigilant at all times. God knows how many people in this world have sacrificed to him and how many people are willing to kill you to please him." Zhang Chung warned coldly, and then locked himself in the basement without looking back. Looking at the heavy wooden door, the girl shrugged her shoulders indifferently and whispered, Okay, I said too much. It seems that Joanna was right. The good men in this world are either dead or they don't like women. As for the rest, they're all selfish bastards." Zhang Chung did not know how Gracie was criticizing him. After returning to the basement, he immediately summoned a spiritual creature to clean the room. Then, he drove the messy thoughts out and took out the parchment to glance at the information on it. He saw that the last line was written in tiny words. Mission. Deciphering the first stage of the notebook completed, you've begun to slowly come into contact with the essence of this world's magical energy. Continue to study it, and you'll discover more secrets hidden behind it. Reward. Increase of the body's maximum mana capacity, 4 talent points. The moment he finished reading the last word, an indescribable arcane energy emerged and flowed along the magic circuit formed by his body at high speed. In the blink of an eye, the maximum mana capacity was increased. As for the talent points, he did not hesitate to choose 2 points of frost extension to increase the maximum range of frost spells. As for the remaining 2 points, one was added to frost energy conduction, which could reduce the mana consumption of frost spells. The other point was added to the famous ice barrier, which was a skill that many players in the game called refrigerator. With the help of this skill, Zhang Cheng did not have to worry too much about being ambushed. As long as the enemy could not kill him immediately, he could use Ice Barrier to quickly isolate himself from all forms of damage and use control spells such as Blink and Frost Nova to distance himself. Chapter 78. Just as Zhang Cheng began to try out his newly acquired spells, in an abandoned subway tunnel under Brooklyn, 7 or 8 guys with dangerous auras gathered together. They looked at each other vigilantly, and no one had the intention to speak. Among them, there were men and women, old and young. There was even one who couldn't be called a person at all. The only thing they had in common was that they all wore a badge on their chests that symbolized identity and status. There was no doubt that these guys were not homeless vagrants, nor were they criminal gangs. They were the lords of the underground world, and each of them had powerful supernatural powers. Generally speaking, due to the inevitable various small conflicts on weekdays, the relationship between the lords was not good. Some were even enemies. It was almost impossible for more than 5 of them to be in a room together. But today, they gave up their daily grievances. Their faces were full of expectations, as if they were waiting for someone to appear as time ticked by. One of the black men with a head full of pigtails finally couldn't help but complain. "Damn it, it's already 10 o'clock in the evening. Why hasn't the Desire Witch Catherine appeared yet? Is she playing with us? Calm down, Ben. There is still 5 minutes before the agreed time. You are too impatient. What's more, although Catherine likes to play tricks, she will never joke about this kind of thing. With her intelligence, she knows very well what serious consequences there will be if she offends us who haven't chosen a side yet." An old man who looked to be in his 60s smiled and comforted him while fiddling with the silver cane in his hand. No matter what, as long as she doesn't appear by the agreed time, I will never wait for another second." Another white man with gloomy eyes expressed his attitude. The black young man nodded and echoed. "That's right. Not only will I not waste time waiting, but I will also join Cassandra's camp and let everyone know what kind of price will be paid for deceiving me. Soulwalker Bane Brockbank." Before he could finish his sentence, a pitter-patter sound came from the end of the pitch-black tunnel. Following that, 2 figures slowly appeared. One of them was the Witch of Desire, Catherine. The crisp sound of footsteps came from her high heels clacking against the ground. As for the other one, it was naturally her assistant and servant, Kars. "Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry, I had something to do at the last minute and had to be delayed for a while. I hope I'm not late. Also, I'm happy to see so many people willing to take time out of their busy schedules to attend this appointment. At the same time, I guarantee that you won't be disappointed." Catherine walked gracefully into the crowd. "Where's the thing?" The black man who called himself Soulwalker Bane asked straightforwardly. Catherine glanced at him meaningfully before turning around and waving at him. "Kars, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and take out the sample." "As you wish, madam." The latter bowed deeply, then opened the box in his hand and placed it on a shabby table. In an instant, test tubes filled with colorful liquids were presented in front of everyone. Without a doubt, these liquids were the batch of magic potions that Zhang Cheng had given to the Pullman not long ago. Although the quantity was not much, it was a complete set. As the ruling class of the underground world, the Lord's vision was naturally not bad. They immediately noticed the faint energy emitted by the time. This was especially so for the old man in his 60s. Without saying a word, he quickly came forward and grabbed one of the bottles. He widened his eyes and observed it carefully. After a full minute, he curled up the corner of his mouth and said in a tone full of surprise, "Magic potion. And it's definitely not from Councilman Miles. Where did you get it? Or to put it another way, when did New York have an alchemist?" My dear Kane, do you think I'm stupid enough to answer such a question?" Catherine stretched out her fingers with red nail polish and gently stroked the old man's white beard. Her tone was full of lust. The old man called Kane smiled and shook his head. "No, of course not. I just couldn't help but ask. Alchemy is different from other crafts. Not only does it require a high level of understanding and learning ability, but it also requires one to be born with talent. Almost all the alchemists in North America will receive the attention and protection of the Supreme Council. I really can't think of anyone who would be willing to be associated with you. After all, your reputation in the underground world is not too good. Ha ha! You can just say that I'm a wanton slut. You don't have to be so reserved. As for your question, I can only tell you that this alchemist is not known to anyone here, and he has not appeared in the sight of the Supreme Council for the time being, Catherine explained with a laugh. As a woman who obtained power from desire and enjoyed the pleasure brought by desire, she did not mind the judgment of the world, nor would she be bound by things like ethics and morals. Without a doubt, Kane understood this point. He took half a step back and avoided the other party's fingers that were stroking his beard. He sighed helplessly and said, "All right, it seems like you haven't changed much from before. You're still as cunning and like to play tricks. Tell me, what do you want to do this time?" The witch smoothed the creases of her purple backless dress in a very seductive manner and replied with a half-smile, "It's very simple. I believe all of you are very clear that Councilman Miles, who has ruled Brooklyn for 30 years, is about to reach the end of his life. The successor will be selected from the current lords through the war game. I hope to get more allies before the game officially begins and promise that anyone who supports me will get a certain share of the magic potion. How about it? Isn't my suggestion good? You mean you want us to pick a side in advance?" The humanoid creature with the face of a cat licked its lips, its eyes glowing with a terrifying green light. Unlike most of the lords that looked no different from ordinary citizens, it looked more like a black panther that walked upright. It had sharp teeth and claws, and its body was covered in thick and soft fur. It had two pointed ears on top of its head, and a tail that swung left and right behind its butt. It was hard to imagine that such a complete alien could live in a densely populated city without being discovered. That's right. Today, I want to know who among you is willing to be my friend and who wants to be my enemy. Chapter 79. Are you threatening us? Bane narrowed his eyes, and a layer of silver-white, translucent spirit emerged from his body. Needless to say, the witch's words had offended his dignity, and he was ready to fight. Catherine obviously did not put the black man in her eyes. She sneered and mocked. "So what if I am, and so what if I am not? Do you think a piece of trash like you is worthy of fighting me? Don't think I don't know that you've been very close to that bitch Cassandra recently, and you even have a little bastard that's neither black nor white. Remember, idiot, there's no such thing as a two-timer in this world. Either say goodbye to your illegitimate child and lover, or be prepared to be killed by me. Understand? F*CK. I'm going to kill you." Vane, who was completely enraged, suddenly summoned the huge, bear-like spirit hidden in his body and waved his claws at the witch. Although some of the fleeting claws did not seem to have much destructive power, every lord present knew that if they were careless, they would be torn to pieces on the spot. Because his ability was to summon and control souls and add a unique energy damage to the soul, even the hardest granite could be easily cut open. Oomph. Karse, teach him a lesson and let him know what a real witch doctor should be like. Catherine raised her right arm and snapped her fingers. She did not even have the intention to do it herself, and just watched the silver-white, translucent bear claws get closer and closer. Understood. The old Mexican man, who was called, calmly touched the ring on his finger. In an instant, a strange black fog quickly surrounded his hands. He took the initiative to take a step forward, raised his right index finger, and gently poked at the claws that pounced on him. The next second, woo 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 woo. Accompanied by an ear-piercing sound, the black fog easily penetrated the bear-like spirit, and in the blink of an eye, half of the claws were dyed black. Seeing this unbelievable scene, Bane's expression changed. He immediately cut off the part that was dyed black and quickly retreated, his eyes full of fear. He could feel that when the black fog invaded his body, he immediately lost control of his soul. If he did not retreat quickly, he might lose the spirit of the giant bear that he had obtained with great difficulty. Seeing that his opponent was retreating, Kars had no intention of pursuing him, slowly controlling the black mist back into the ring. He mocked with a tone full of disdain. "What's the matter? A lord recognized by the council is actually afraid of a servant like me? Or is it that you're just a good-for-nothing, and that you were able to become a feudal lord by pure luck? Who are you? Why would a powerful witch doctor like you willingly become her servant?" Bane carefully probed. After the short exchange, just now, he could already confirm that the other party's attainments in the field of soul control were 100% above his own. He decisively gave up on the idea of using force. "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is your choice, young man. Please believe me, the lady is definitely not an enemy you can deal with. Her strength is far above yours and mine." After saying that, Kars turned back to the witch, took out a handkerchief from his pocket, and bent down to wipe off the dust on his high heels. This action not only stunned the black man, but even the remaining feudal lords showed an expression of disbelief. They could not believe that a person who was comparable to, or even stronger than, a feudal lord would be willing to be a servant, and for several years at that. Catherine observed everyone's reaction, and soon a trace of playfulness appeared on her face. She then pointed to the magic potion in the box, and then pointed to herself and said, "Now choose. Do you want the magic potion or become my enemy? Please don't worry. I promise that no matter what choice you make, you can leave safely today." "I choose the magic potion." The feudal lord, who looked like a walking Black Panther, did not hesitate at all. He was the first to make his choice. "Welcome, respected Lord Marat. I swear that you will not regret your choice." Catherine opened her arms and gave the big guy, who was more than 2 meters tall, a warm hug. With the first one taking the lead, the second, third, and fourth feudal lords quickly stood up and chose to join the witch's camp. They were not fools, and they knew very well how great of an advantage a witch who controlled a large number of magic potions could gain in the war game. Moreover, just a few minutes ago, a few more shadows suddenly appeared in the darkness. Although they were affected by the light and could not see their faces, judging from their physique, they were most likely the other feudal lords of Brooklyn, who were also the witch's staunch allies. On one side was temptation, and on the other side was a threat. Anyone with half a brain would know which side to stand on. After a short 5 or 6 minutes, only 3 people were still standing in the same place. One of them was the black man, Bane, another was a white man with gloomy eyes, and the last one was the old man with gray hair, Kane. Catherine ignored the first 2 people and went to Kane's side. She gently breathed in his ear, lowered her voice, and said seductively, "My dear, what are you hesitating for? Have you forgotten the good times we spent together?" "Hee, of course I haven't forgotten. You know, you almost sucked me dry several times back then. Don't worry, I don't want to be your enemy. I just want to bargain." The old man smiled and explained, "Oh, please tell me, what additional conditions do you want?" Knowing that the other party had no intention of being her enemy, Catherine immediately showed the attitude of a little girl, blinking her eyes innocently. Kane looked at the colorful magic potions in the box. After about half a minute, he stroked the thick beard on his chin and said, "The conditions are very simple. You will arrange for me to meet with this alchemist." "Meet?" Catherine's eyes immediately became sharp. "Yes, meet." Kane nodded without fear. "I have encountered a little trouble recently, and I urgently need the alchemist's help. I promise, no matter what the final result is, I will help you clear the obstacles in your path of power." "Good deal." The witch lowered her head and hesitated for a moment before giving a definite answer. She knew the power of this old man in front of her, and also knew what it meant to receive his help. Anyway, it wouldn't be long before the secret of Zhang Cheng's alchemy would be completely exposed. It was definitely worth it to exchange for a bargaining chip that could decide the outcome of the battle. Then, to celebrate our reunion after 20 years, cheers. Kane raised his hands and made a grabbing motion in the air. 2 glasses filled with red wine appeared in his palms. He passed one of the glasses to Catherine and lightly touched it. He raised his head and drank it in one gulp. "Cheers." Catherine also drank all the wine, and then asked the last 2 people, "If I'm not wrong, You have chosen to be my enemy, right? Don't think that you can win because you have more people. Anything can happen in a war game. Bane said coldly before turning around and disappearing into the endless darkness. He.